Welcome back to the Build Brewery. Today we're going to do a damage decoy and mag combo. The idea is something that was proposed on a previous stream, and we tested it out on the spot. I got excited, and I've been meaning to get back to this for a few weeks. So it's Loki's damage decoy augment. This causes decoy to be a debuff on enemies. It doesn't summon a clone of you instead. Enemies who attack the decoy get a bunch of random status effects. They take more damage. Not so excited about that. Now, attacking the decoy. Well, they've got a hit. That's just one of several targets they could have. The idea is to use Magnetize on mag to make it so bullets in a quite large area will hit that decoy instead. So we're going to debuff a single enemy with decoy and Magnetize and profit. They will all of the status effects. There will be more status effects. It also seems to work with Archon mods, which means that because you can get a variety, basically all status effects, any applicable effect from an Archon mod inflicting, electricity damage or toxin or whatever, you will trigger these. So you get energy regen basically for free. You would want to use stretch. And then this makes you get corrosive when you get toxin. You can already get corrosive from damage decoy, but you'll get it more often, right? So I'm going to show you that quickly, and I have a kind of mock-up or example build prepared, as you saw, but then we're going to spend some time fiddling with it, labbing it, discussing it, playing it, and iterating on it more, and hopefully making something fun and interesting, effective. It's not a super objective thing in Warframe, like how do you define effectiveness? Like this will get the job done, but everything will. Why use this instead of something else? I do have a lot of thoughts about this in particular, because two Warframe abilities to not really kill or even fully incapacitate any enemy kind of seems like like what's the point of that? I have some thoughts, and I'm sure you all will too. So folks, if you're not familiar with the Build Brewery, certainly we are going to focus more on fiddling with the build and discussion, but if you just want a kind of completed version with a summary, I always put that at the end. So there are timestamps in the description. You can jump around. There are some break parts just for pacing. If you watch this for the whole 2 hours, I'm going to want to break. You'll probably want to break. And I have those included in, but if you want to skip them, you can use the chapters timestamps. And yeah, that's the plan. I hope it sounds fun. Glad to have you. Welcome back, folks. Let me welcome a few folks back while we just quickly give it a shot. Though a lot of people that are regulars to the stream, you probably remember seeing this already. So we will damage decoy and magnetize. That might not have been the right target. And you'll see that I probably didn't get the right target. But enemies are sure grouped up in there. And now if I could damage decoy the magnetized target, we'd be all good. I think the way that it's worked better for me in the past is to also use, I have counterpulse on this build, so this will make enemies kind of just stand still. You saw one of the reasons it was hard to cast magnetize and damage decoy on the same target is because everybody was moving around. And so what I'll do this time is jump in, use counterpulse to make enemies kind of stand still for a sec, then magnetize, and then I'm bad at this game, so I didn't use damage decoy, but you'd see that would work better. Third time is the charm. Yeah, decoy then magnetize is the correct order. Asymptomatic, welcome back. Asymptomatic, you were the one who proposed this idea, and I wasn't sure you would be here today. Welcome back. I'm glad to have you. I thought it would be interesting in its own way, but sad if we were covering your suggestion and you weren't here. So I'm glad to see you here. What's up? Welcome back. Am I just an idiot and that was not damage decoy? I put it in the 4th slot. Is that what happened? Yeah, I remember we decided to use pull because the benefit of being able to move around the sort of blob of enemies. So once you do this, I've finally set it up after 4 tries because I am actually an idiot. And you can see enemies have a propensity of status effects and are suddenly dying much faster than this time than all the other times. You can see that much more robustly actually killed all of the enemies, whereas the previous 3 times basically nothing happened. These are only level 100 enemies and not on the steel path, but you can see, while I don't think this is the main draw of this combination, they're dead, it certainly does a number on them or whatever. It's good with sentinels too, because they can pump damage into the orb. But there are also a few benefits to, if they stay alive, being able to move them around. So I'll try to show you that just quickly. Because I do think that's a meaningful feature of this, is that the result of doing your damage decoy blob set up. And now these are the 150, so they should survive a little longer. You can yank it around. You can just sort of move the whole chunk of enemies. Now, it looks like the magnetized target died in there, but you can always just cast more. Anyway, you get the idea. Being able to kind of move them around is nice. So yeah, that's the premise. As you can see, it sure does do the thing. And then there's a variety of advantages. I hinted a little earlier at, you can use Archon mods very easily. That's nice. I think it has like decent with mag.
Enjoying some of the new weapons.
Timbergecko, thanks to the Prime sub. We won't talk about those too much today, but they might come up as options for Mag's kit. We are going to look at some weapon options. But thank you very much for the sub, Timbergecko. Thanks for stopping by for a little bit. I appreciate the support. I'm adding Timbergecko. It's a Twitch Prime sub, so I treat those as $5 Patreon submissions as well. My Discord syncing system should give you the same as if you did a $5 Patreon thing. I'm adding a lot of perks to the $5 tier in June, so please use those. Thank you very much for your support. I've been trying to add some new stuff for a while. You will be getting it, so just I hope you enjoy it. There's a new thing where you can do a kind of group Q&A Parley response thing. I'll do a kind of group response video where I rapid fire through a bunch of people's responses to a prompt of mine. And we're also doing a thing where people can submit video ideas and then vote on each other's video ideas. And the top voted idea will become a video by me every month on top of a bunch of other videos. Anyway, thank you very much. Anyway, just catching up a little bit more. There were a couple comments, and then we've kind of covered the premise, and then we'll go into some details. Asymptomatic, you said the base number of 350% reflected damage does sponge up things like precision intensify. It is still asking enemies to kill other enemies, which will frequently disable themselves after the first or second shot. Right, like one of the reasons that you would think that enemies won't die very much to this happening is that because they're getting random status effects, like imagine how many status effects make enemies bad at hurting each other. To some extent, I don't expect a heavy gunner laying into an enemy with damage decoy on them to be attacking very much for very long. Eventually they're going to get radiation or heat or impact or something and just not be shooting. Also, 350% damage on its own is just not very much. It just isn't like to enemies. Enemy weapons are designed to damage us, our warframes. To enemy health, that isn't a very big damage multiplier. We have on the stream explored before, actually from you, Asymptomatic, mostly. We have on the stream before explored builds that try to make enemy damage high enough, multiplied by enough things, basically, to harm other enemies, but you need much more than this, suffice it to say. This is not even close. Even if you were to buff it with strength, I suspect, though here I actually have actively negative strength, so it's reflecting much less damage. I don't see that as significant, and I think there's a lot of advantages to not bothering with strength on this build, but we will certainly talk about it because you may very well disagree. And as Asymptomatic points out, you could consider using, I'm not going to be able to find it manually, Precision Intensify. One of the fun things about Helminth abilities is you can put the ability in the 4th slot and then use Precision Intensify with it, so you certainly could do that here. But I personally somewhat doubt that that would do particularly significant damage. I haven't tried it. You'd be getting, 1,000% damage. The enemy does 10 times their normal damage to opponents. In my experience, it sounds good, but it's not enough for them to be really hurting each other much. They do have heat and corrosive and stuff, though. I don't know. Their armor is weakened, so maybe. You saw it did a number on enemies' armor when we were doing the test before. Asymptomatic, you said, I mostly consider Magnetize the definitive answer to me over Rage, like Equinox, making enemies attack each other faster, since both are single target debuffs, and increasing the hitbox and damage taken trumps target speed and damage taken for me. Right, you could use damage decoy with other effects that make enemies better at hurting each other, but I don't see Magnetize not being the best one. And because this is already not very powerful, in my opinion, I think you want to get it to actually work by giving it as much help as possible. But you could go Rage, Equinox's Rage ability. Yep. Pingers, welcome back. You said, does damage decoy keep the magnetized target alive longer? I think no. I'm pretty sure it just... So the weird thing about damage decoy is it says decoy can be cast on enemies so flippantly, like that's no big deal. Warframe, that's completely different than what decoy does. That's not that's not related to the decoy ability. I guess in theory it's like the enemies have someone else to shoot. It's vaguely related, but that's not. It raises a lot of questions about what does the ability do now. Well, how can you just say decoy is an enemy debuff now? You know, the duration of decoy stays the same. The energy cost, the range, if you will, but like besides that, you know, things like the health and shield absorb thing, I have no idea what damage decoy does to those. I would say probably not. You know, it makes them like neither here nor there, that likely to stay alive or not. That's just my impression. It would be interesting if it inflated enemy HP, right? But I don't think that is a thing. My experience is this is neither here nor there for the enemy survivability. Good question, though. Jamon, welcome back. Pixel, welcome back. Pixel, you said synergies like that scale like crazy and are wholly weapon independent are on the rise with the way recently Digital Extremes has abused loadout randomization as a difficulty enabler. So this being a make enemies hit themselves hard enough to actually die could be a mark in its favor rather than against. Sure, that's a one way to think of it, Pixel. That's an interesting point. I'm going to write that in the notes for later, but to quickly respond now, the idea is that while it might seem a little underwhelming, like you could just shoot enemies with your guns and then they will die. Yeah, but a lot of the difficulty modifiers we've gotten in recent years have been you do not reliably have a way to do that. And you might not have the weapon you have that has a lot of damage. And so a completely weapon independent way to sort of condemn enemies to the grave, not so bad, sure. Though this is hardly the only one. I agree. That's a good point now that you bring it up that way. We're basically just in the heat of the discussion now. So yeah, great. Let's just get started. But we've caught up. And again, people watching it as an archive, if you want to just jump around to some part, feel free to do that. I included the timestamps. You're not hurting my feelings. But I do, you know, these are live shows, so they're paced to be enjoyable to watch all at once, I guess, with breaks. So asymptomatic, to continue your thought, you said the question posed by damage decoy to me is who, and my answer is mag. Damage decoy itself is suspect, so I'm indulging it as a curiosity rather than a go-to. I agree. For me, what's exciting about damage decoy here is not so much damage decoy itself as that it makes magnetize makes enemies very dead. You know, you can do basically anything else to enemies in magnetize and they will die. But you do have to do something to them. You do have to do something to them or they will not just die. And I think the thing I like about this is that this makes the something that you do to make the enemies in magnetize die be another mag ability. Well, mag's base abilities, none of those make the enemies die. But this adds an ability to your mag that when combined with magnetize, they more or less just die. Or they're very incapacitated. I don't know. They're adequately incapacitated. Let's just do it one more time, too. Why the heck not? Because I forgot what button it was on at the beginning of the stream, so I messed it up a lot of times. Disable them just so they stay still. And then, yeah, you can see there's like a propensity of bad things happening to we. Okay, sometimes that happens. There's a lot of bad things that happen to good people when you use this augment. And of course, you could just set it up again, too. It's not particularly energy intensive. That's another positive of this combination. You can see you can kind of just do it. It kind of just happens. And provided some finicking, enemies just die. You have been seeing this a little bit, but something that I do think is a highlight as well as we get into what do you use around it. And we were just talking about, do you want to use a different warframe with it? Is using the Volclock on a Sentinel. This is basically the Lanka sniper rifle. It is a projectile-based, so it has travel time, it's not hit scan. Projectile-based sniper rifle for your Sentinel. And it has a lot of innate punch through as well. So your Sentinel firing this into a magnetize will do the thing many normal Warframe weapons do, where the bullet will orbit around inside and hit enemies over and over again. That is a good amount of why you're seeing enemies just die when I use this combo. I'm going to take Taxon off. It doesn't have to be Taxon, but you know, a Sentinel with the Volclock off. and do it again just so you can see how much of a difference it makes, you know, how much less dead enemies will be if this happens, but then I don't add any damage in. I'm not going to shoot or anything. You can see enemies hitting each other, so they'll bump around a little, but a lot of the time they'll all stay packed. So you can see these enemies are not all dead, but they are not in a good way. Yeah, it's not pretty for them. They're just not killed. So you can see the Sentinel was doing a lot, a few seconds free to just wail on these enemies, and the whole group was dead. So the Sentinel really is adding a lot. One could just shoot. You could just shoot in there. Even something pretty modest often does pretty substantial damage, but yeah, I just wanted to point out how effective the Sentinel was. A lot of that damage was not just magnetize and damage decoy. Damage decoy is largely softening the enemies. Just catching back up a little bit more. And again, you could pursue other options. We probably won't have time to do this, but I do still think it's interesting to consider. Do you want to damage decoy on someone else? I kind of feel like mag is the stronger half of the two. Is this a mag build with damage decoy or a damage decoy build with mag? I find that kind of question very useful to frame discussion. I think of it as a mag build with damage decoy. You could add Pixel, you said Toxic Lash. Can it do silly Asthma Saren thing? I feel like the Asthma has been broken for forever, so I don't know about that. You're trying to use Toxic Lash with damage decoy. Is the idea that maybe enemies attacking the damage decoy target or the damage decoy target attacking enemies will do a thing? I'm not totally sure I understand that combo, but it's an interesting idea. Again, basically anything that kind of does damage over time. Sarin spores, and then you, I guess, damage decoy stuff? The idea being the decoy shoots stuff and just maintains spores all by itself. Well, I believe that the damage decoy effect does not make the decoy an ally. It just means enemies will shoot them. It like turns on friendly fire, basically. I'm pretty sure damage decoy isn't... It's not mind control. It's like a weird variant mind control, but it feels like it is, but I don't think it is. So I don't think that would work. Now, what you're asking, I think, I see now is, do enemies shooting damage decoy cause sarin spores to spread? I would predict that it does not. But I don't know for sure. That's an interesting question. Making spores spread automatically is very useful. I don't know if this ability does that, but I feel like a lot of Warframe damage over time effects do that. So I don't know, but it's an interesting idea. Maybe we should have the discussion now, since it's come up a few times already and there's good thoughts about it now. So let's have it now. Why not shoot them? I feel like basically the crux of the discussion is, I mean, you can kill them by shooting them. And so what does this accomplish? Pingers, you said, I don't really see Mag as needing it most of the time, though. Like, she already does that, shooting many guns at most any glob of enemies. Right, the benefit of this would simply be that you are making enemies be dead if you cast Magnetize, or be disabled a lot, without your weapon doing that job, which would primarily be useful for, I guess, two reasons. You want to slash from really far away, we'll kind of get back to that, or you can't pick what weapons you have on your loadout. We mentioned earlier that point 2 is surprisingly relevant. There are a number of challenge modes in Warframe currently where you just can't choose what weapons you fire at enemies. So it might be surprisingly useful to have a way to very bad way enemies, Duviri and Archimedia, right? To put enemies in a bad way without needing a weapon that does that. Though a lot of weapons, to be fair, like make enemies have a bad time with Magnetize. Not at all of them. There's certainly like normal hit scan guns are like just fine with Magnetize. But I do still think that has significance. Personally, I'm also a little bit interested in point 1. While it's a little bit difficult to do this to enemies from really far away, you can do it with some aim, frankly. And I would not be able to do that much bad stuff to those enemies from way over here with a weapon. You see what I mean? That's some range, don't you think? I think that's useful for things like, this is kind of a zone control ability, which some people who've watched the stream a lot may know is a bit of a pet favorite of mine. I really like zone control abilities. I think it's a very undersung piece of utility in Warframe. I think Warframe, to be blunt, doesn't have enough different things that are useful, and so I will happily take what we can get. I think that zone control is useful, and it is like the most useful thing that players the least relatively value. It's the thing people would not list that I think is the most useful. When you do an interception, or you do a maybe mobile defense, or a disruption mission, being able to put like something bad is happening that disrupts enemies a lot somewhere far away that you can see but far away is useful, in my opinion, and also a lot of fun. It's fun to be able to look over there and say, hey, screw off my point, and then go back to whatever you were carousing, whatever you like to do with your day. And I think that this is not too bad at that either. A nice, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but a nice synergy is that because Magnetize is so hungry for range, and then of course the casting range of these abilities is also, what is it going to be, the range stat. You end up being able to apply them from very far away, usually as far as you would need to, except maybe in the open world. The open world would be a fun thing to test. Shall we do that today a little bit? But mostly I feel like the why for me is that, you know, it's kind of a zone control thing. It does rather bad things to, for all I know, very good people. Maybe not the Grenier, but, you know, that corpus has a family from pretty far away. That's useful. There's only a handful of other ways to do that in Warframe. Open world is what I wanted to make a note of. But for the most part, to me, that's kind of enough. Pingers, I think it's great that you asked that. I hope it doesn't come across as anything other than that. But I also wanted to say that I increasingly have been trying to play up the importance to the average player, in my opinion, of just because it's different and fun. You will win pretty much no matter what you do in most games with involved build options. The game is loosely balanced enough that if you understand the systems as much as most of the people watching this stream do, you can produce innumerable builds that will complete the mission. It's not really all that relevant, like how good or why effective the thing is from a strict effectiveness sense. Again, that's not to say that Pingers has anything but a great conversation point to bring up. Just to say that I wouldn't want to overlook it's something different. It's fun. You know, that to me, that's the main reason. I just feel like it is still, in a lot of videos, I like to emphasize me, a player. Once I've decided I'm just going to use something because it's fun, I do still want whatever is good about it. You know what I mean? I'm still going to, I guess, maximize it a little bit. And the thing is usually kind of a crapshoot whether it's going to be good. So maximizing it a little bit is hardly going to make it feel overpowered. We're not going to get that. I mean, this is literally just range at the moment. So, I mean, we're not particularly getting anywhere fast, but anyway, for me, that's enough of an answer, but I'm happy if people have other things to add to that point. Asymptomatic, I wanted to get back also to, you kind of responded to this. You said you were inspired by the Murmur faction enemies because some of the biggest targets are without armor. See a flying target, single it out, then watch the numbers fly. Plus, some of the common enemies self-destruct when taking sufficient damage, so the enemies will kill other enemies one way or another. Right, there's less of a need to do damage and more of a need to just group and soften. Interesting. Yeah, let's test it in Murmur and Open World. Those are two great. That's extremely helpful. We have places to use it that it would be good. I love to include that when we discuss these kinds of things too. Very cool. Just skimming chat to see if I missed anything. And then I want to talk about mod choices a little. I think we kind of did catalyzing shields together on the stream. I think this is a good way to keep this build alive. I talked about counterpulse a little bit. And then at the moment, it's almost literally just range. I do want to talk about strength and growing power because Magnetize has a damage multiplier element. And if you have fully negative strength or very negative strength, it's actually negative by a little bit, which I think is significant. You gain quite a large relative damage boost to enemies in Magnetize if you just make it not negative. stacking up a lot of strength like does something, makes enemies take more damage in there. But I think the most important thing is to just get a little. So I think growing power actually goes a long way. This is just generally so often the aura that does something, but I actually think it's a fairly big deal here. And you could add more, right? One of the easiest things to add with arcanes is power strength. So that's a sensible thing to do. And this is a nice build for that, right? Like the build operates fine without it, but it benefits from it if you have it as well. So yeah, that's a good, it feels like a good molt augmented loadout, for example. Cool. Yep. Great idea. Just skimming, catching back up on chat. Ragnavar, welcome back. We're doing damage decoy and magnetized discharge. We're debuffing for fun and profit. I love debuffing enemies. I feel like in many games, debuffs are kind of bad because there's tons of enemies and you're just making one enemy blah, blah, blah a lot. One of the things I like about this is the ruining one enemy's day also ruins a lot of other enemies' days. I guess that's sort of better, but it's still ultimately on one enemy that if they die, then it all goes away. Not amazing, but in Warframe, when you can have so much energy to do it as often as you want, really, you can reapply it so easily. It's not too bad, and I've always really liked debuffing. If people are familiar with World of Warcraft, my first character was, you want to guess? You can pause for a second if you're familiar with, I played classic World of Warcraft, so that was like 20 years ago now, jeez. You can think about what class you think I might have played based on what I just said. It was a warlock. I played an affliction warlock in PvP for like 5 years of my childhood. Childhood? I was a teenager. I don't know. Feather, welcome back. Professional Simp, welcome back. You said, how's your Warframe grind been like recently? You may just be trying to relate. I hope it doesn't sound harsh when I say I do everything in my power to never grind anything in Warframe. Part of the reason that is ever possible is because of the Warframe community team and the Warframe creator program providing a little sample of things in each update. I have said before that I think that my end game in Warframe kind of became streaming and discussing the build systems in it. It became like as an example among others of a game to talk about builds and stuff in. I think Warframe is very valuable, but I am not interested in grinding for things. Like I find that I don't consider that to have value. For me, it would be better if everything was just unlocked. Whereas for other people, if everything was unlocked, they would stop playing because they would have no motivation to grind. This is tricky because Warframe is a game where I think grinding stuff is a big part of its design. Whereas there are a lot of other games that have lots of interesting build options, but they're not. Grinding isn't really a big part of the game. You just have to do it. Whereas in Warframe, I feel like it's a large part of the design. All of this is to say, to some extent, Warframe is kind of a bad game for me to stream a lot because I'm less likely to like what you like if you just like Warframe. I really don't. I like Warframe's build system. Professional Simp, that is to say, I have not been good, I guess. But I like I really like the lab tile set. I've been enjoying that. Professional Simp, I have been playing a little bit of that. I've been getting reputation for that faction, and we will be doing that a little later today too. And I have been enjoying that because it hasn't become too grindy yet. I haven't done too much of it yet. To the extent that I can stay in that kind of flow, I want to play the game. I just don't want to have to grind for things to have options to play the game with. And as long as I can do that, I'm pretty happy with Warframe. So it's complicated with me. And you're not the only one to say so. Tamer Gecko, you said, hope you're enjoying some of the new weapons when you prime subbed earlier. And I'll be honest with you, Tamer Gecko, my immediate reaction was, what new weapons? Like, I guess the Onos, and then there's a pretty interesting weapon that's like these weird fist things that I'm forgetting the name of at the moment. Yeah, am I going to remember that? I think I'm leveling them. Ruvox, yep, these guys. Very fascinating design for a fist weapon. Anyway, I like them, but I think I'm largely enjoying them because I don't have to farm for them. I likely wouldn't get or have them if I didn't get them through the creator program. I wouldn't have time. I want to, but I also have to be playing enough other games that I wouldn't be there. So, I mean, good overall. Professional Simp, I really like the direction the design has gone in recently. Overall, I feel like new things added to the game, and it's not that recent, but the companion rebalance fairly recently was something I was a huge fan of. I think it's a big shot in the arm to the game's build diversity. There's so much game in the companion slot, and yet a lot of it was just rendered moot for a lot of people by companions dying, and a lot of it because a lot of the mods just needed a retouch. And that they've done some of that already, I think, is huge. All the new duplex, all the bond mods, duplex bond in particular, but all the bond mods have also just added a lot, breathed a lot of new life into companions. I'm really looking forward to further reworks. I think they are still doing that. So that's been really cool. Probably the closest thing I've been doing to grinding has been re-leveling some companions, though that'll probably happen more once we get the weapon changes and the companion precept changes. They basically just changed companions dying permanently, they don't anymore, and added a huge amount of new build diversity by adding a ton of bond mods. What they haven't done yet is reworked the basic companion precepts, though I think I would hope a lot of them will just be buffed. Taxon is here for this mag loadout because of molecular conversion. I want a shield refresh to combine with catalyzing shields. You have a long base shield gate duration, but you don't have many max shields, so you probably aren't going to have much longer than that base duration. Gaining a little bit of shield back with auger mods or with molecular conversion, my understanding of how this works is very strong. That's part of how I'm planning to stay alive. It's a little weird because mag has a lot of shields. You could go the route of trying to make mag durable, run adaptation and maybe more shields or more overshields or something. That's a sensible route. It's a lot easier to do a lot of overshields and survive with shields in general if you use a helmet ability, but we've already used it on damage decoy. You know, you could use pillage or something. Mag's own fourth ability is not a terrible source of overshields. But because we're not doing that, I thought we'd go in a somewhat odd direction. But we're bringing a companion anyway with a gun, a sentinel, to shoot the Volklock, or that's what I want to do. And so I thought, Taxon, we'll use the shield gate thing. Another thing that is probably effective, but I actually haven't tried in missions that much yet, is Polarize does restore like a chunk of shields to you. And so I suppose that is probably good with catalyzing shields. You can get back shields whenever you want. But it's not like amazingly synergistic with mag specifically. It's just a compact way that doesn't step on any of the toes of anything we're doing to stay alive. There's like 30 ways to stay alive effectively in Warframe nowadays, but that's why. That's what I had in mind. I love the schnoz on Taxon. Thank you. The Taxon schnoz fashion is of the utmost importance. What you're going to want to do is get the Coltech Sentinel mask and put nothing else on Taxon, because it's an X, which is the letter of my name, and that's how I win, as the kids say. But yeah, we can waffle around with mods a little bit more now, because you may very well not want the strength thing to be the same way. You might want more strength. Asymptomatic, you said, I snuck in auger strength for a second auger mod and a light response to overextended. Yep, it's really valuable to get a lot of range on this build, particularly valuable because range, of course, increases the radius, the area that you cover. Having more range further increases the range, cover a even larger total additional area because circles, spheres, and therefore having a particularly high amount of range. It's like the more range you have, the better it is to get more, provided it doesn't fill the whole room, which it doesn't. So running Magnetized Discharge, a stretch for Magnetize, and then all the other range is particularly effective on this build. Range stacking is effective instead of less effective, like other stats can be. And it doesn't fill the whole room even at max range. So very good. But the result is that you have kind of low strength. It doesn't do a whole lot on this build. I mean, enemies will be in a bad way from the combo, and just magnetizing enemies makes them vulnerable to many kinds of damage, even without debuffing them further. So arguably it doesn't do a whole lot to have more strength, but I had mentioned before, strength does give a damage multiplier to like enemies in the bubble take more damage. I believe the main target takes more damage, and then the bubble absorbs more damage, which means at the end or over time or when it explodes, it'll do more damage. But enemies take more damage significantly when they're in the bubble. When it's very low, the multiplier is kind of low. Let me show you how it increases if we have no strength mods. Can I just blow up one of these builds? Yeah. Mind control mag. We got like 50 mind control builds. It's fine. So if we have no strength and then we start adding strength, you'll see it starts at a 2x multiplier. And so adding just a little bit above 40%, if we were at 50%, it would be, I think, 1x. And then that means growing power is kicking you up to doing like 1.25 times damage or something instead of 0.8, less damage. So I think a little strength goes a long way. By the same token, you're definitely still not at the point where strength has fallen off. So a little more strength, more auger mod effect is also good. You could add more. I don't think it's all, as you can see, it really ruins enemies' days as is. So I feel like it doesn't do a huge amount, and it barely affects the other abilities. That's the other reason I'm kind of woe to add more strength. I put it in this slot because I feel like there's the least to lose. I don't really see auras as being in a good place yet, so I feel like paying the aura slot does a little. Then again, I mean, it's not bad. So again, I think Molt Augmented is still a decent option. But I just don't think the strength does too much. Asymptomatic, you did make another good point though, which is that the damage multiplier for the magnetized main target and then the damage multiplier from damage decoy, in theory, there might be something good there. Magnetized's main target takes more damage. Enemies shooting that target, because they have damage decoy on them, reflect back a lot more damage. So an enemy shoots the magnetized target for 100 damage. That damage is increased by some amount because of magnetize. It is then reflected back at the enemy that shot and increased by another amount, which may multiply separately. That actually might not be a bad total damage multiplier. It could be interesting to try a variant of this build where we just go max damage, try to do a bunch of strength and see just how high the damage gets, because this will meaningfully harm enemy armor. Like if they get heat or corrosive or toxin, that will give them corrosive. So it's possible that I'm underselling how much this can do damage. We could try that. That sounds fun. But anyway, yeah, in fact, let's that does sound cool. Let's set up a build like that too. Just going on to respond to another topic, Asymptomatic, you said, personally, I disagree with the circle argument. After a certain point, the range is yes, and the bubble is a sufficient wrist flick for humans and a formality for enemies. I mean, I was trying to agree with you. That was my argument, is just a disagreement about when the radius is yes, as you put it. I agree that if you feel like the radius has filled the whole room, yeah, like more strength, more range, isn't better if it fills the entire room. It's just my experience that it does not, even with max range in this case. Magnetizes range is modest enough, in my experience, that a good amount of the time I'm using all the range I built. If you don't feel like you are, then I don't think we disagree. I would completely agree on dropping some range. We just have different experiences of whether it does fill the whole room. If I felt like it did, I would be doing the same thing. You said I'm spending 2 mods on just range, and then adding, 3 and then 4 runs a steep cost if it's already basically filling the whole room. We should talk about the mod opportunity cost a little bit too. But one of the benefits of doing another decoy loadout, which I'll make now. Oh, do you have to infuse it in 2 at once? That's a little frustrating. I guess we'll just remake the 1 slot I have. Is that we can see, you might not lose all that much range in exchange for a lot of strength. If that is a lot of damage, then I would be interested. That could be cool. I would like to see enemies die more to this, so. But you can see on the current build, I mean, I think stretch has its own benefit, so I'm not too torn up about this slot. Overextended is a ton of range, and then it really comes down to these 2 slots that you're giving up to have more range. This doesn't represent significant anything else in my mind. And so I feel like that is little cost, and I would want an auger mod. So really the main thing I would be considering would be just switching this to auger secrets. personally. I want the auger effect, and so I feel like the opportunity cost, normally very high, 2 more mods for only 1 more stretch worth of range, has become small because I just don't want much else in these slots. But again, if I wanted strength, that it could be a lot. So I get what you mean. I guess the main thing for me is so many of these mods are either just a huge amount or they provide some secondary benefit the build wants anyway. But yeah, you absolutely could do like Augur Reach to Augur Secrets or Cunning Drift to Power Drift. I just feel like the bigger gain at the moment is the range. But the best thing to do is we could just compare. Let's go back to the testing room and take a look. Yeah, because I would think that these damage multipliers would be adding up if the enemies don't have much armor, which they looked like they didn't in a lot of the tests before. Enemies in the cluster pile of, magnetized with damage decoy looked to have little armor. I'm gonna remove my companion again because I think I have demonstrated to you that the damage from the Volclock is pretty significant here. So once again, we'll just do it with only what I have now. I also want to talk a little bit about replacing Counterpulse potentially. And you're just seeing what's happening to enemies inside. You can see quite a number of them don't have a lot of armor. Now the Butchers don't have any armor because I used whatever Counterpulse's base ability is called, Polarize. So that's a little deceptive, but you can see many enemies inside the okay, and many enemies inside the bubble have something that is making their armor worse. So it's not like there's nothing bad happening to their defenses. Let's see what happens if you add substantially more strength. So we'll just swap the 2 lower priority ones we're keeping the auger effect, but strength now, and then we're dropping Cunning Drift for Power Drift. So the multiplier on the magnetized target went up quite a bit. It went from 0.8 to 1.58x. This is a great visual demonstration. I should have done this instead of what I did before, of how much of a benefit you get because your strength is so low. It's kind of the opposite of falling off. You have so much strength, now adding more doesn't do much. You have so little strength, adding a little bit does a lot. So we should see a significant damage increase. And remember, we have growing power as well, and in a normal mission, you might have a lot of strength from Molt Augmented. So, yeah, let's take a look. Enemies? Would you like to, would you care? What the heck is happening? Okay, no, put that one away. Warframe is just being weird. Let's do it again. Let those poor people go. Okay. Attack each other? Yeah. Kill each other? Kill him harder? Yep. Yeah, so as you can see, this time, you hear the sound effects. Enemies are dying in there. That's a decent amount more damage. Yeah, okay, I'm kind of sold. The radius of the bubble is also still, let's just focus on that for a sec. The radius of the bubble is still really big, so I'm willing to sacrifice the range increase. I think a lot of what helps is that you just have so much from magnetized discharge as well, while that additional 45% range in these slots does equal a lot of area. The area is already very large, so, there's still the idea that there's some kind of fall off. Yep. Yeah, I'm a little sold asymptomatic. I think we should explore Counterpulse too. You could take this off. I like it, but I think it's still worth discussing. Mr. Fruit, welcome back. I missed you coming in a minute ago. How you doing? Thank you for the Prime sub for 32 months. Welcome back. You said, why the decoy? Mr. Fruit, the gimmick is meant to be that you debuff an enemy with damage decoy, which causes them to status up enemies that shoot them. and then make it very easy for them to get shot and group enemies into an awful pile of sadness with magnetize. So you're taking the same target and damage decoying them and magnetize discharging them, or magnetizing them. And damage decoy then makes many bad things happen to them and the enemies inside the magnetize. So damage decoy that guy, magnetize that guy, and then every enemy that's pulled together is hopefully shooting and hitting the damage decoy and getting a million status effects, which causes shenanigans and death to ensue. As you can see, I'm pleased. That was a good demo. When you do it live, sometimes the game doesn't totally cooperate, which I think is good. It's good to show failure. If the combo doesn't work consistently, I think it's good to show that if the player is meant to have fun with it, right? But it does mostly work. I mean, it checks out. That seems like a lot of effort to achieve little in an actual mission. I don't really agree. I mean, you just have to hit 2 buttons while looking at an enemy. We did talk a little bit earlier about how, to some extent, the benefit is not so much that it is sure killing those enemies. Like, you can do that with lots of things. Mr. Fruit, there's definitely a discussion to be had, and we had it earlier, but I'm happy to have it more, about what the value of this is. It's not so much that these enemies die super a lot. They would die super a lot if you cast Magnetize and shot a weapon into the Magnetize. Though it can't be literally anything, you do have to do some damage. So the main benefits are, in my mind, one, that it doesn't involve a gun. If you're doing a type of difficulty, Brewery, Archimedia, where your weapons are randomized, this is just the Warframe powers will largely pacify, to put it politely, the group of enemies. And 2, the range is really good. The range of the Magnetize is good, but you can do it from really far away. You can shoot into the bubble from far away, but the damage decoy effect and Magnetize stack can be applied to enemies from far away and then lingers for a long time. I actually think that killing enemies slower, I didn't mention this before, but killing enemies a little slower, but still having the inevitability is a positive as well. The effect that is disrupting that area, your interception point isn't getting taken, lasts for a while, but the enemies are still more or less dead. Like, you don't really have to worry about them, being alive much at the end. A quick double tap with whatever as you circle back around to that point will probably be enough. Adding a little more duration also wouldn't be so bad. You can see that little sentence I just said was the duration of Magnetize, so making that a little longer would help as well. But as ever, Mr. Fruit, most of the point is not that it's particularly powerful. I don't think that particularly matters in current Warframe, but we're not trying to pretend it is. It's mostly just, it's fun, and it is effective at certain things, just not particularly more or less, just differently effective than, like, shooting the enemies. A good question, for sure. But to some extent, I freely admit feeling like no matter what build you make in Warframe, it will always beg that question. And so to some extent, the answer is similar for me a lot of the time. What ability you replace and other augments is also up for discussion. So first, let's talk about Counterpulse, Ragnavar. One of the benefits of Counterpulse is it's just you throw out some crowd control. Simple. It's a, with this build, 6-second stun. It can be used to make it easier to set up damage decoy and magnetize, but you don't particularly need to do that. I mean, usually from far away, it's fine. The main thing is just it's some survivability that I like. You could instead replace Polarize for decoy. Do the damage decoy thing, and then you would have Mag's 4th ability, which has an augment that Mr. Food is ahead of me on, which destroys enemy armor. Oh, and casting speed, very nice. They must have changed that. You said, to me, it would seem like keeping the 4th ability with its augment would be the easier way to achieve this decoy thing. My memory of this ability is that the radius is not amazing, but let's see to what extent that compares to the cast radius for these abilities. Magnetize, where is your cast radius? No? Okay. I thought I had that. Okay, fine. Let's look at Decoy's range. The base range is pretty similar, actually. No, I guess I misremembered that. Crush has good range. Doing the cast range for Magnetize might be infinite. Yep. Thank you, Bionic Me. Welcome back. Yeah, Mr. Fruit, you could do that. You could add Fracturing Crush. Again, to some extent, I'll be honest that I sometimes don't know what to say. It's like, I think it's an interesting option to consider. If you don't like it, that's okay. But I sort of feel like there is no, it's like neither here nor there. There is going to be no argument for why like this or that in Warframe is a like perfect opportunity cost. Warframe doesn't have good opportunity cost. The why does this need to be in this slot? Nothing needs to be any slot in Warframe. I guess that's my response. It's okay to be bothered by that, Mr. Food. I would hate to come across as like that's a silly thing to say. It's not. I guess I just feel held hostage by the game a little when people ask that in Warframe. There is never a good answer to that for any build in Warframe, in my opinion. And so I guess like no, you could use Fracturing Crush too. It's not the same thing, sure. Again, this would likely mostly result in enemies dying faster, which is its own benefit, whereas this largely makes the area of Magnetize more enemy disabling to new enemies that come in, or again, provide lingering disruption in the area, which isn't always better. It's often worse, but that is kind of a different benefit. You could also replace Pull, people were bringing up before. You could keep Counterpulse and replace Pull instead. I like Pull because it lets you, Pull is just good anyway. You can group enemies up to kill them in a group, melee weapons in particular. Pull now pulls enemies into a tight clump at your feet rather than just yanking them forward. And another thing you can do with Pull is like move around the decoy, damage decoy blob. I think Pull is like of the three, Pull to me feels like not the least valuable. I feel like that would probably be Polarize. If I was going to consider replacing Pull, I think personally I would replace Polarize. So that's I guess my 2 cents. What to replace is sort of that topic, but that's why I thought Crush. You could consider it redundant with Damage Decoy, but as Mr. Food says, that could be a reason not to use Damage Decoy. If you're not interested in this, you could just use your Helmet ability on something else. I feel like they're good at different things, but they're kind of not. It's not dissimilar what they're strong at, sure. But yeah, I personally think I would be putting pressure on Polarize. Again, I kind of like having just like a random crowd control thing. And because this build is currently staying alive using catalyzing shields, you know, you're totally invulnerable, but unless you get hit too often. I like the idea of your shield gate pops and you disable everyone for 6 seconds. That to me is a sort of safety net, feels comfy enough without needing to disable every enemy all of the time. I could just see that my shield gate goes off, and then I counterpulse everyone to stay safe for a minute. Having Magnetize active is pretty good at keeping you safe too, but then you have a safety net and another safety net, and to me that's comfortable. But as with all survivability, it's going to be down to comfort. And counterpulse isn't fully necessary there, right? Like you could just cast Crush. And one of the bad things about Polarize is it's expensive. It's 75 energy. One of the things that's always sucked about this ability, or really Counterpulse as an augment, is the duration is so bad. It's really bad. It's affected by duration mods, but it's 4 seconds at base. That's just not good. That's too short. It's funny because Warframe is so full of like you throw out random crowd control that makes enemies not move. This is like maybe the worst one in the entire game in some ways, not because it's bad, but because it's just worse than all the other ones. Like so many of the crowd control abilities have like 15-second base duration. Go get a snack, you know what I mean? You can do Excalibur's Radial Blind with duration and make a cocktail. Like this one is not like that. And it also it doesn't play nice with the rest of Mag's kit in that if you were to build big duration, you'd be building narrow-minded, and range is amazing on all 3 of Mag's other abilities. In other words, if you make the duration good, you make the rest of Mag's kit bad to some extent. So you've mostly convinced me, actually, Mr. Food. I feel like I don't feel like Crush is a worse enough safety net. Like in some ways I might like it a little bit less, but I think I would rather try that. So let's swap that in and give it a shot. Another good thing about Crush is that it gives modest overshields. Not incredible if you don't have a lot of range, though we did increase the range. So let's try that. Feather, you said with Crush, I personally need cast speed, and actually the augment for Crush adds casting speed. I was gonna say the same thing. Crush is so slow, but Polarize is also a little slow, and the Crush augment adds casting speed. That is a glorious thing. So yeah, let's move it. Let's try it. Mr. Food, I'm mostly sold. Let's give it a go. I've always liked the just quickly, poor Polarize, but there's not a lot good to say. But the animation of Polarize has always been really fun to me. You just fist bump and enemies become unable to. They just start fiddling with their guns. They're like, oh no, his aura is too strong. And I've always loved that. But it's kind of silly too. It's a bit of an anticlimax because they only get disabled for like 4 seconds. They just get over it. They laugh at the meme and then they just shoot you. Config A. 2. No, I'm kind of settled on doing a bit of strength. We can stick to 1 slot. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Feed. Yeah, I've always really liked Polarize. I like the idea. Mag has this thing where when you use Polarize, you get these magnetic shards that drop on the ground, and I just think they don't do enough to my eye anyway. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. But I always feel like those magnetic shards don't do enough, and thus Polarize loses another bit of utility it might have had. Okay. Fracture and Crush. Meh, the armor reduction, meh. That's how I feel about meh. It's easy to max out the armor reduction on this, but we have low strength. Well, are we gonna have enough from this? How much does this give you? 250 x 24. Okay, so you get about a fourth of 250 as strength, which is like some quick mental math is that's like 66% strength, 60%. It's around there. Is that right? 60% at rank 5. Thank you. Oh yeah, it's because it's 0.24. That's very neat. 60% at rank 5, and then we have 25% from here. So how much strength do you need to max out Fracture and Crush, and do we get it with that part of the build? That should be more than you need. So how about secrets? That's not enough. Power drift should be enough. Yes. That's 140, and that's enough to max it out. So we have 80% right now. We add 25, and then we add 60. That is absolutely enough. In fact, you could just barely cut this, right? Yeah. You can drop growing power if you want to. If you're willing to wait for mold augmented to fully max out, and you have it at rank 5, which I don't, which I'm not willing to wait for that. So I'm going to use growing power still for now. But yeah, that's pretty good. That's neat. You get the full Fracture and Crush benefit. You don't have to use this either. We still have the damage decoy thing, so now we can look at what if you do all 3 of these abilities, and how good is Crush's range? 43 meter radius. Yeehaw! That's pretty good. Get along, little doggies. That's how you rustle them up. That's how we used to do it back in the World of Warcraft Classic. Great. Yeah, I don't know. I'm convinced. Koala-chan, welcome back. You said, good evening. Are we trying to weaponize Decoy? We are. We're using damage decoy, which turns Decoy into a targeted debuff instead of making a decoy. Like it does. Well, you can still make a decoy. For a second, I thought it was of Loki. It's with Alex Prime. That's amusing. But if you target enemies, it's a debuff that makes them into a decoy. So we'll do the whole stack now, which is to find an enemy, decoy them, magnetize them, and then you can also get more energy. and armor crush everybody, which should make them very bad way. Remember, it won't do all the armor reduction now because we haven't killed enemies and stacked up that arcane, but it's still substantial. I mean, that still is a meaningful impact. Isn't the armor reduction cumulative now? That's another thing that's worth noting, because two will do it. Warframe made a change somewhat recently that means that abilities that reduce armor like this, like Crush's augment, you know, they chop off like a 50%, let's say, of the enemy's armor. If you've been playing Warframe for a while, those used to remove relative armor, like current armor. And so they were really bad if you didn't remove all armor the first time, because subsequent casts would remove surprisingly little armor. You'd remove 50% and then 50% of what was left, but that was kind of like just removing 25%, etc. Now they're all directly additive. If you remove 50% and then you do it again, you just remove the other 50%. If you remove 75% and then do it again, you remove way more than all of the rest. You get the idea. In other words, they're significantly buffed if you don't have full strength. So while me as a player, like part of my preference is I kind of hate it when the ability isn't, ooh, nice and clean, crispy. It has exactly 100%. You know what I mean? I really prefer that for absolutely no reason. It's just a kind of compulsive thing. It is quite adequate to have it have, you know, 80% or whatever reduction. And then if you really need the rest, you can always just do it again. And I believe this is worded a little weird, but I believe the armor reduction is permanent. So it says Crush Augment. Crush gains 50% casting speed. The armor of surviving enemies decreases by 75%, and they are unable to move for 7 seconds. Not the clearest wording, but I believe that the 7 seconds is only for them being unable to move. The armor reduction is permanent, I believe. The wiki says it is. Sure, that's my memory, and the wiki put together is probably good enough. I don't know. Yeah, just about pull, since we were talking before about what to replace. And before we break, let's do a quick, you know, what does pull do? Do you care? You might not care. That's a lot of the point of, wow, that's some range. That's a lot of the point of doing these streams is you could decide for yourself. I'm not saying pull is the right choice. Do you want this? Do you want to be able to move the whole blob? I kind of do like that. Sometimes it can be very nice, satisfying, just fun. And I personally, again, think pull is more to the point, just a good ability. Like pull is a very good standalone ability. I think one of Mag's weaknesses is that the abilities are not very good standalone abilities. They can combine together to make enemies very dead, but they do little when you use them by themselves. So I really like pull having just like a thing, you know. So yeah, anyway, yeah, I mean, now that we're getting into it, I feel like this is almost better in every way than Counter Pulse. So I'm certainly sold on replacing Polarize. I really think Pull is worth keeping. Jaman, you said, is greedy pull still a thing? It is. One of the reasons that this has dropped some stonks recently is because on other Warframes, pull has had a range reduction. I think it's only 50% of the range. One of the reasons is that it is now a proper grouping ability. It groups enemies very reliably into a tight clump instead of just violently yanking them backwards. Which makes it much stronger as a grouping ability, but similar abilities in the Helmet system had their range nerfed, and so this was made consistent with those, and thus had its range nerfed. Indirectly, this makes the use of it as greedy pull significantly worse. I don't think it's particularly overpowered to pay a Helmet ability and an augment slot, or a Warframe slot, to loot from further away, but now that is not that amazing. You can't make the range all that good. If you max out your range, it's like 30-ish meters, if I remember correctly, except on Mag. I mean, on Mag, it's the full range is there. So if you want it, yep, this build certainly has the range. So if you wanted to fit it, we are a little bit tight on space. We are. You know, you can. It's doable. You don't need to do any of these three things to enemies, really. I mean, you could just take this off and cast Magnetize, and you know, enemies will be dead some amount of the time if you know, put enough stuff in there. I'll shoot some miter discs in. The miter's kind of a weakish weapon, but it's just meant to demonstrate how little you can do and still have bad things happen to enemies. My sentinel will do a couple of Volklock shots. You can see, you know, they're doing the thing, right? So it's fine. I mean, if you want to omit this stuff, you can. It just gives you more things you can add to the magnetized blob. And we do have steel path enemies that are up to the 200s on when you farm. Archimedes Lab is not what it's called. Albrecht and Trotti's laboratory. Archimedes is the guy with the sand. That's not correct. The other guy, yeah, you know. Help me out here. You know, the old guy with the wall, the Warframe's plot. Archimedes is a pigeon. Okay. The sand, the catapults, the guy who made the ballistas, that Entrati guy, yeah. Feather, you said, depending on when you remember it from, it's worth noting that Greedy Pull was changed to line of sight a long while ago. I don't remember it not being myself, but that's a good note, since we were talking about Greedy Pull. Gujimon, you said, I always felt like Greedy Pull is such a small payoff for an entire mod slot. Honestly expected to just put on the main ability at this point. Yeah, it's weird because in the situation where you would care about Greedy Pull, I feel like it's a pretty dramatic effect. And yet, in most situations in Warframe, it does almost nothing, right? When you make I guess, like, exterminate type farming build, you blow up the crates and then suck in loot. It can have a pretty big impact, but in every other situation in Warframe, it basically doesn't do anything. And so I agree that it's sort of a weird effect in a way. And if you put it on any Warframe other than Mag, a Helminth ability is a big opportunity cost. And so you could argue really doesn't need to be an augment. Yep. Folks, with that, that's half of the show. We're gonna break. Do a split and away we go. I'll catch up on chat a little bit before we go just to make sure. Feather, you said something I didn't understand before, but I thought we'd come back to it. You said, I thought there's some meaningful benefit to the ability being an on-off switch rather than needing multiple casts. It streamlines the gameplay loop and makes the game easier to read. Are you talking about the idea of having Fracturing Crush have full armor reduction? And it's nice if that is just in one cast, like an on-off switch for armor. Maybe that's what you meant. Yeah, I agree. There's some armor there. Maybe you were just adding to the point I said about, you know, I just have a kind of compulsion to have it be 100% armor, and you were adding the point that there is a real benefit to that. Yeah, there absolutely is, for sure. And it's not very much strength, too. So maybe that's what you meant. Rightover, you said, I'm not really sure if I agree that Pull is actually that good, frankly, as there's cleaner Helminth grouping abilities. But on this loadout, if you already use the Helminth ability, I would argue the value of keeping Pull on the loadout is pretty good. Because you get a grouping ability for free, sort of. I just meant I think Pull is like decent in this context. In the metagame of grouping abilities in Warframe, there is only madness. So I mean that's not, you know, we could talk about that if you want some other time, but yeah, I also think Greedy Pull is just pretty niche. I just mentioned it since Jaman brought it up. I know some people really like Greedy Pull, and to be fair, it is a lot better on Mag because you don't have the range reduction. So if you want it, I mean, you can totally take off one of the 3 all arguably overkill augments that we're using, but I don't want to. I think it's fun. I think a debuffing ability is neat. And you could keep polarized. I just don't. I talked about this a little earlier. I just don't view the shards, the magnetizable shards that polarize makes, as being significant. It's just, in my eyes, they don't do enough. But if you feel like they do, that's a pretty solid reason to keep polarized, sure. Asymptomatic says, I want my precision intensify. That is one more benefit. You can put precision intensify on damage decoy if you put it in the slot that crushes in. Yep. I personally have a little bit of trouble finding room for it on this build if I want the augments, which I do. Mr. Fruit, you said, does the Hunter Munitions Don't Explode the Grenade Penta build still work on mag? I have not heard of that. I will make a note and we can take a look. Because certainly, even though we were talking about how a lot of the benefit is that you can kill enemies super a lot without using a weapon, you know, you're kind of maximizing the debuffing power against that large group with only Warframe powers. That is one of the benefits, but it is one thing that this does. It's still, I mean, a lot of the time playing Warframe, you will get to pick what weapons to bring. So it's still absolutely worth having a discussion about what do you want. There's a lot of things you can shoot into mags magnetize. So finding something that goes all the way, or a category of weapon that you're interested in. I like the miter, which I'll talk about in a minute, because it's kind of a middle ground thing. But yeah, we could talk about that after the break. Let's thank a few folks for supporting the show, and then I'll be right back. Thank you, Mr. Fruit, Hammer Gecko, and Pistol Whip for recently subscribing. Pistol Whip, you were gifted a sub from Asymptomatic, I remember. Thanks for supporting the show, folks. Without your support, I'd have to stop doing this. That's how I get paid. Thank you very much. And again, Mr. Fruit and Tamer Gecko, your Prime subs, which I treat as a $5 Patreon equivalent, and I'm doing a bunch of new perks at that tier this month, so I'll let you know more about them as they roll out in June. I hope you enjoy them. I'm pretty excited about them myself. They're kind of extensions of Parley, which I know, Mr. Fruit, you've already done for years. So I'm looking forward to it a lot. And people who aren't familiar with that, all that kind of stuff where we make videos based on input from patrons or Twitch subs and stuff, those videos are always all free for everyone to watch. It's just those people are paying for the necessarily limited space to be in them. So you'll be able to find them too. I'll make a video properly explaining all of that once it's all up and working. But I hope you enjoy it. I'll talk about them in a few weeks. Well, a few days, but up through a few weeks. And for now, I'll talk to you all in a few. Hello, and welcome back to my Twitch ARRchive parlay, the part of the show where I try to keep you entertained while taking a quick break by answering a few questions from folks who've watched previous streams. This one is from Seameister, who says, "Hi, I used to really enjoy those short videos you did every day for only a week or two. Why did you stop?" Okay, so I know the ones you're talking about. I'll describe them in a minute in case people aren't familiar. I guess for me, the kind of core response I have to this is, how short is too short? And it becomes a discussion about short form videos in general. So these were, like a couple of years ago when I was just starting to figure out how to cover builds and build systems in games generally. I tried making daily 1-minute videos for about a week. Now, I didn't make them as YouTube shorts, vertical format videos that are in that separate part of YouTube and you scroll them. I didn't make them as that. And I think why is probably mostly a topic for another time. We'll see if we get to it. I made them as 1-minute normal format videos. The purpose was just to put out a video every day and have the experience of doing that. Part of answering why I stopped is answering why did I do it? If I was going to stop after a week, why did I even start, right? And basically the reason is that YouTube is all about consistency. If you can consistently put up videos that the same people would want to watch, your channel probably will do well. The algorithm kind of just explodes trends. It generally doesn't, sometimes does, but generally doesn't. It's not productive to think of it as making things succeed out of nowhere. It feels like it does, but it really doesn't. Generally, the reliable part that you can make into a career is about trends. And so the idea was, well, if I have like a medium length video, there are different topics in the video. What if you chopped it up into 7 chunks and made those as videos, right? That's why I say, how short is too short? I just think that if you're going to discuss builds, it's a somewhat involved topic. I'm not sure there are any topics worth discussing that are 1 minute. I'm not sure there are any topics that are a daily video length. You know what I mean? There is such a thing as too many videos, is kind of a separate related concept. Some of you have told me in the past, some audience members have said, you know, if there's a bunch of videos I haven't seen for a creator filling up in my inbox, I sort of feel like it's getting away from me a little bit. I don't want to feel like I'm missing things. Now, of course, they're there forever. Some of you might say, well, who cares? That person has their own unique problem. But I do think it makes people feel a little overwhelmed. It's nice to feel like the cadence of the channel is your cadence. It's a good rhythm for you. I believe that a lot of you probably have a taste for that a little bit like me, and you would probably like 1 to 2 videos a week when I currently put out 1 to 2 videos a month. And so accelerating that speed to about 1 to 2 videos a week, that's a lot more, but it's doable. That to me, that feels like kind of the most that makes sense. It's better, I think, to invest more time in a kind of better, more full-bodied experience instead of making a bunch of little ones that are chopped up. You know, so the little videos I made that one time, it was like a build video. This was for Necros. I remember this pretty well. And I basically just took it and chopped it up into a bunch of pieces. Now, they were all their own topic, but often people use the metaphor of a meal. I think it's a better meal if you served all of those side dishes, not sure about that metaphor, together. And more might be too much. You know, contrasting build compared to another build, do everything on the entire loadout in Warframe. That's a lot of things. Your focus builds, your companion build, not all of that might be relevant, but if it felt like it was, that might feel like too much all at once. Again, I think that how short is too short is the question to ask. Short is good if you can respect the audience's time, but another way to say it is how dense is too dense. And I think there is such a thing as that too. There is a very famous quip, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. Making something short is hard. At the same time, only so condensed, only so short is even good. There is such a thing as too condensed, too short as well. And the difficult thing about making videos on YouTube about a complex topic is that you need to make a bunch of compromises for which there is no correct answer about when to streamline and when to elaborate. And choosing those things based on your taste and what you think the audience would enjoy and people's level of knowledge and who the target audience for the video is what makes it difficult to make consistent videos every day or every week or however often that the same people would watch, because you have to know that kind of unknowable target rather precisely. I wanted to see what type of video I would like to make. Do I want to make videos that are 1 minute every single day I make a video? Every day I make a video, fun. The 1 minute thing, though, it wasn't that fulfilling to me either. And the biggest trick to do, put on a good stream or to make consistent videos is to make them be what you want to make consistently. If you make a YouTube short every day for a month, your channel will probably do really good in response, though there's some trade-offs. But to do that, you need to come up with a topic about which you have something to say every day for a month. And even for people who have that much stuff to say, I certainly don't have that much stuff to say about very many topics, right? So I would say that's my complete answer. This was a good question. I hope you're not sad that those videos went away. I am going to try to make similar things over time. I would think Gameplay Gems, that series I've been doing, is sort of in the similar ballpark. And I do like the idea of making short videos. I'm just not sure how short a video can be and still be about builds and making builds and build systems in games and have it be a complete meal for that topic. You know what I mean? Thanks for the question. If you want to ask another one like this, you'd be doing me a favor. It helps me have something to discuss during these breaks. You can post it using a link I'm posting in chat right now, and I'll answer it this time next Thursday. For now, on with the show. And a few other quick thank yous to folks for supporting the show before we continue. There's a couple of other questions I want to get back to you as well. William, thanks for being my most recent patron. You've actually been on and off for a few years. You've been a patron before, but you went back to the $9 a month tier for the long version of the little archive parlays I do in the streams, the full parlay on the Pantaloon Saloon channel. Looking forward to what you decide to ask, basically any prompt you want. Looking forward to it, and folks, if you're interested in those, if you just want more of me archive parlaying, all the stuff on that channel is free. You can find it at the Pantaloon Saloon YouTube channel. Asymptomatic, thank you for the $205.27 tip. I appreciate it. You said it was an early birthday present. My birthday is indeed in 2 days. Thank you very much. Awfully generous tip. I know you get a lot out of the streams, but it's still really kind of you. Thank you very much. Making it work. Speaking of asymptomatic, you said a few of the channels I subscribe to and kind of keep an eye on, but don't actually subscribe like fully to. Sometimes slice specific bits from their videos for shareability and like plugs for watching the video. I like it when humor is snuck into my video essays, so crystallizing some of those jokes is a good use of shorts for me. It's interesting you say that. It's pretty divisive. I don't like that. I like the humor snuck into my video essays, but I don't like it when shorts are not a new video. To me, that's kind of a sin in a way. To me, as a creator, my job is to entertain you, and so to some extent, giving you a notification, but then it's not new content if you watch everything. To me, it's like the person that watches everything is the person I want. Now, I think you're trying to make the point that there is some potential value sometimes to highlighting only one part alone of a video that was already made. You could also look at, a recut parody of a video, where technically it's no new content, but it's been reorganized into something that is different than what its parts were before. And I kind of agree with that. Like, I can sort of see where you're coming from. Personally, I want it to be transformative. That's my preference. And it's important to me that it not just be a plug for the main video. Another thing that people have brought to my attention that I didn't talk about too much in the main parlay is that some of you in the audience have told me that you find shorts quite unhealthily scrollable, basically. Jaman, you said, if I ever click on a short, it turns into hours of mindless scrolling. I cannot control myself around it. And I'm not here to criticize that. While obviously it would be good if you could, I'm not going to tell the victim of the thing designed to exploit your attention that you're doing something wrong, right? Like, as someone who knows that happens to people, I'm inclined to avoid shorts entirely because I feel like it's not fair to people's attention. And I want you to be able to like my videos without having to engage in shorts if you don't want to find them. I would be more inclined to start a separate project entirely for shorts. Were I convinced it was worthwhile to make a lot of YouTube shorts for like money or something, I would be likely to start an entirely unrelated project to do that rather than to use them on my current channel. And Jaman, if it makes you feel any better, I hope you don't need to be made to feel better, but just to encourage you to feel like there's a lot of reasons that it's not good to do shorts. Another reason is that it disrupts community kind of formedness. The shorts community, or the type of people who watch shorts a lot, are largely not the same as the kind of people that have found my videos so far. And that will affect discussion, which for our community actually matters. For a lot of channels that have millions of views anyway, there isn't a coherent community in the first place, I would argue. Whereas here, that is something to lose. Finally, to drive it home all the way, and Koala-chan, you're really right on time. Some of you have told me before, and Koala-chan said, I don't even see any shorts content. I have filters set up to kick all of them from my feed. Some of you have told me that you've gone so far as to literally make it so you won't see the existence of shorts. Which is a little terrifying to me. It's like YouTube already might do that to my videos. I definitely don't want to make a type of video that some of you have told me you've deleted from existence. Like, that's not going to stop me from like ever making anything. Like, some of you deciding to do that, it doesn't mean no one should ever make shorts. But I get your concerns. Being honest with you, I actually feel to some extent like people have mildly overreacted about like how, I guess, bad shorts are. They have problems. I would only be willing to say what I just said after acknowledging that there are many issues with them, as I just have. I watch a good number of single shorts. I have a rule about YouTube that I don't really scroll searching for things, but I have a couple of channels I follow that make them that I think are really good. You can have shorts that are just like videos that are good videos that happen to be vertical in a minute. But most of them just aren't. Like that's the problem is that's not really, and that's not what the form encourages, really. Shorts are a topic I'd like to talk about again because I have had my mind changed a little about them. But they one of the ways I've had my mind changed is that they are nearly fatal to a like good discussion community. So I will almost certainly not be willing to make them for my current YouTube channels. Zanypants channel, for example. Anyway, the discussion is worth having more. Just to say, you all have quite nice opinions about it. It's something I always like when people bring it up. I just feel like I know Mr. Fruit isn't saying this is every short ever, but when you say something about the way people edit shorts wakes up my inner nihilist, it's like I know what you mean, but there are lots of good shorts that don't do that. I like you could just not do that, but people don't not do that. And I don't mean to be picky. It makes me feel like, but it is a cool idea. There's something really healthy and good potentially creatively about forcing yourself to make daily 1-minute videos. People are just not doing that. The good version of it. Some people are, very few people, but some people are. I don't know how this became me overall slightly defending shorts because I don't really want to do that. I hope that makes sense. I'm just playing devil's advocate. I think there is something to be gained, but it requires much more engagement with the subject philosophically than just making some shorts. Burn the shorts lover. You may and you may. I'm actually okay with that. You may do that. Going back to the Warframe thing for just a second, there was another comment I didn't mean to leave off. Ragnavar, you said at higher levels, the polarized fragments, the fragments made by polarize, gain a big increase in damage as they scale up based on 25% of the shields and armor removed by polarize as slash and puncture. I take that over a grouping ability that in my experience can screw with Magnetized's own grouping, but fair enough if it works better for you. Yeah, I mean, maybe I overemphasized the benefit of the grouping up. I just feel like with many weapons, especially melee weapons, a grouping ability means instead of killing these few enemies, you kill 20 enemies all at once, which can't really be beat by any other form of I feel like that slightly undervalues grouping abilities. I feel like grouping abilities are much stronger than almost any amount of damage unless it's applied in a huge area. But I agree that there are benefits to polarize. And I'm happy that you explained outright where the damage is coming from because I simply don't know that. So certainly, I mean, as always, my goal is not really to get people to agree with me. I would rather they heard your desire for it. Yeah, there's certainly a good reason to use it. But I find the argument for removing it compelling when comparing Crush, which does almost everything except that better, and then Pull, which, again, I value grouping abilities pretty highly. Maybe I overemphasized moving the magnetized cloud around. That's just funny. It's not, I don't think that's that good a lot of the time. I just think it's amusing. It can be okay sometimes, but most of the time I'm using Pull as a standalone Warframe power. I just think it's good with melee weapons. Mostly it would be like heavy attack things or spin to win. Oh, your Gram Prime, sit in the group of enemies and spin to win while they're all grouped at your feet, and this makes you kill a lot more of them at a time when you do that. I think these are very good. I think grouping abilities are something a lot of people in the community are sick of too. I'm kind of aware of that because they're so ubiquitous. They're a common recommendation. I think that reputation is, technically speaking, well-deserved. Like from an effectiveness perspective, it's not really wrong to think that they're very good. I think they are. I often don't add pulling or grouping abilities to my frames, but if they already have one, I mean, that's hard to beat, in my opinion. That's why I like them. Again, I'm not really here to say it's wrong to prefer something else. I just want to explain why I think it's good. So thank you for saying why you think Polarize is good. It got an unfair shake in the previous. Well, it's not really possible to give anything a fair shake, but you get the point. Just to say from what people were. Jimon, you said, I'll watch your 30-second vertical video if the site didn't just hijack my tiny brain, which I totally understand. To finish that subject, Jimon, I could not understand that more. That's kind of how I feel. It's like you want to watch it, but you feel shorts are a sort of brain hazard, and I respect that personally. To me, that means I ought to step away from them. Another way to look at it is, some of you pay me a good amount of money for the entertainment I make. Part of what you are paying for is that it's not full of sponsorships and it's not shorts. I'm willing to do that for money. Why wouldn't I be? I would be making the shorts for money. I mean, that's the problem. There are some ideological benefits to making videos that are that length and that format that are not just like YouTube go burr. You know what I mean? But I can just get those benefits without making them shorts. Like, that's okay. They just make 1-minute videos that are not technically shorts. That's another thing too. It's Sandy Pants, not Sandy Shorts, SMH. Shaking my SMH my head. That's... God damn it. I can't believe no one's done that. Well, someone has said you should do Zandy Shorts. But that's like an argument for making a separate channel called Zandy Shorts. You know what I mean? I'm not going to make shorts and call them Zandy Shorts. The worst part is that Zandy Shorts would be incredible branding. That's right. Like, but just by the way, that's trademarked. No, it's not. I have no lawyer. I'm an independent creator. You know I have no lawyer. Asymptomatic personally, on the other hand, though, I'm a creator, a YouTube user who curates my notifications to an unhealthy degree, you said. Asymptomatic continues while also hitting refresh more often than I care to admit. My cutoff is packing several videos into an hours-long compilation. Repackaging old videos as shorts, I've seen Babish doing this lately, is within my realm of tolerance. Sure, right. I mean, if it's not just blatantly phoning it in, that's one thing. I rewatch people I like's videos sometimes, so the idea that they would repack them is like sort of unfair for me to dislike so much, because I literally do that myself sometimes, so I'm kind of with you there. And Asymptomatic, I didn't have anything to say, but you suggested some things that you like as short form videos, which I've been thinking about a lot as well. We've been talking about this for a while because it's interesting to me. I want to finish discussing the mag thing. But I will just quickly say my partner and I are doing this creative exercise together where I'm making a video every single day before noon, like with a good amount of the workday left, basically. Those videos won't always be Zandy Pants or even bootleg builds videos. They might not all go up, but I'm making one every day for a while. And I let my partner make the thumbnails for them. They can be anything whatsoever. I said if it's a landscape picture, go for it. You know what I mean? The world is your oyster. So I'm not sure what those are going to be. And I'm making videos so fast, I'm not going to be able to make other thumbnails for them. So if you see something weird, especially on the Bootleg Builds channel, that's what that is. It'll be more stuff to watch. It's about like builds, you know what I mean? I mean, it's not a meme. I mean, they're sort of memes, but I don't know. It's like a serious. I tried to make it good. I don't know. I'm underselling it. Like it's fun. It's a cool video. I did it today. It went great. This was the first day we were doing it. Asymptomatic, you said I'm not like other thumbnails. Wink. I'm actually not going to do a wink here. Let's. Oh my god. We can. You know what? We can talk more about the shorts thing when we get into gameplay, which we'll do in just a minute. Mr. Foot, before the break, we did we were talking about things to shoot into magnetize, and you mentioned some kind of penta thing. So it sounded like you're trying to fire a penta grenade and not blow it up, and then it has hunter munitions on it. Would you like to suggest the build? I guess I'll try to build that out as best as I understand. Multiple is good, right? I guess the punch through doesn't matter because the unexploded grenades have infinite punch through, or they don't. They're just like a physics object. I don't know. I don't really know how that form does damage. If you have a suggested build for how it would work, or I don't really understand why 100 munitions is good in that case. Is it just because the collision, when the pentagrenades hit enemies and they haven't exploded, they do damage on collision? I would imagine the idea of 100 munitions is to make that damage be a slash status effect so it gets through defenses. But I have no idea what else would increase that damage. I suppose galvanized chamber, but because the penta is the penta, you know, there's a maximum number of grenades that can be out at once. I would imagine that the multi-shot thing would help because it means one trigger pull results in more of the 5 or whatever grenades you can have. Just do the viral hybrid build without multi-shot. Oh, can the grenade trigger viral status effects in general? Sure, yeah, do that. And then let's use amalgam serration because I like to sprint faster. And this, and crits. Can it crit? I bet it can crit. Critical delay, yep. And vital sense. This, why not? Is no multi-shot just because of the thing where the penta has a limited number of grenades, but doesn't it still make more in the one trigger pull? This just isn't as good as usual because it reduces, all it does is reduce the number of trigger pulls. It doesn't reduce the maximum damage output over a unit of time. Is that why no multi-shot? Yeah, it is the 5 grenades at any given time, but this still means you output a lot more with one pull of the trigger, right? So I still kind of think that's good. Did that get close enough? Hey, there it is. Yeah. So, yeah. And maybe we should have... I made a judgment call. I feel like people kind of know... That's satisfying to watch. I feel like people kind of know that you can just kill people with anything using... those are the pentagrenades, if that wasn't clear. I feel like people know that you can just kill enemies with anything using magnetize, but the reason I kind of wanted to take 5 seconds to do this is just to hit home how like irrelevantly easy it is to just kill enemies with anything when you use magnetize. Because if you throw a pentagrenade in there, it just kind of hits forever. Pixel, you said, does the grenade direct hit do a forced impact? I don't think so, but let's take a look. These heavy heckin' grenades. No, doesn't look like it to me. So Penta, and basically this section is just about what would you like to shoot at enemies while doing it. Now that was that Penta example, and it's just a pile of damage. I mean, it's a normal Penta build. The goal is to not explode the grenade because then it has not really infinite punch through, but it just kind of doesn't punch through. It will just keep whacking enemies over and over again. This is the Penta grenade I use for pleasure. But we're not in the land of pleasure. This is cold hard effectiveness. So if you want that as a normal gun, I personally recommend napalm grenades and not this. But that's by the by. I was using the miter before. Somebody said the miter is an Incarnon. I don't have it. So I don't know what it does. But yeah, that would maybe be relevant because the miter is kind of bad, but there's a couple of reasons why I feel like it's sort of relevant. One of them is neutralizing justice. It destroys nullifier bubbles. It says 90% chance, but remember, it's also got multi-shot. So it will nearly 100% of the time. There's a negligible chance, let's say, to not destroy a nullifier bubble. I think this is nice because they can be a real problem for mag. Having wide area affecting abilities that have long range means nullifiers are pretty likely to be annoying if they're anywhere. They're interfering with what you're doing basically no matter where they are. So I think this is an unusually good weapon for mag. And another reason it's good is because it kind of has the qualities of the other weapons that are good with mag, with magnetize. It has a lot of punch through and slash. Now it's still significantly weaker than a lot of the other options, which is why the Incarnon, pretty much no matter what it does, I have no idea what it does, but pretty much no matter what it does is probably a great boon here. I'm actually being kind of a nerd and doing gas, because it's like it'll hit multiple enemies and then gas will gas the other gassed enemies and they'll gas while you gas. Gas, gas, gas. I want to step on the gas. But you should really use viral, probably, if you want it to do like more, but still kind of no damage. But it does no damage. And so that's why I did the gas thing, but it does no damage. I don't know. That's why I did that. Maybe we'll look at viral for a sec. And we could go all day, and we won't, but we will look at like a few more things if you just want options. You could add punch through to this. That's probably a good idea, because that's not that much damage. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you. It has utility, but you would really want more damage out of it, right? I have Prime Shred already. Okay, well, da-ba-da-ba-da. That's kind of butts that it doesn't do more damage than that. That's big butts. Qualichan, you said, I'm using Nadaruk. It's supposed to have infinite punch through, but I'm not sure if that actually works in the bubble. Mr. Fruit, you said Nadaruk has an oddity where the projectiles can only hit any given enemy once. Thank you, Warframe. Very cool. That seems pretty bad in this context, but then this does really good damage. You might not need to hit one enemy more than that much. Let's just do it. That's not what I meant to do. Yeah, I mean, it's still like you can reliably shoot people with the, this is still fine, right? That's fine. So you could still do that if you wanted. Yeah, it's still gonna kill everything. That's the point of this section, is that there's not too much of a point of talking about this too much more, because almost everything will just kill everything. And from there on, Asymptomatic, you said, my pet gun has been the Alternox. Oh, this guy. Unlike some of its contemporaries, Tenet Ferox, for example, the Alternox is a persistent ball that affects status chance. That is affected by status chance, that accepts status chance. I could not be reading your comment worse. You can put status chance on the persistent ball form. The innate electricity is kind of weird, but a sticky ball of corrosive is not a bad thing either. Mildly new toy Shivering Contagion can also take one enemy's cold procs into several enemies worth of cold procs. No innate grouping as a gun though, which is where the Ferox mention comes back. Yeah, the Ferox, the Philarx, and the Alternox are like mildly frying my brain right now. I have no idea what I've built on this. It's electricity and viral right now. Let's just see how it behaves with the bubble, because that's ultimately the realm that we've entered here. I can't stop doing that. I'm not sure if that... Why did that explode immediately? Well, anyway, you can use this in the enemies grouped in the magnetized bubble to, like, do the thing. So that's, yeah. The Ferox is... The Ferox... Is this to keep enemies grouped together? Like, to keep them in the bubble? And then the Philarx is not the same thing, and is this Shoddy Boy. Yeah, something that we didn't talk about too much, and that's why the Lightum is here, is that another basically unrelated to this entire video use for Magnetize is to get you headshots reliably. I really like that use case. Let me just briefly show you that happening. So I'm just going to use Magnetize and shoot up, and you'll see that it will score headshots like somewhat reliably. Somehow that is not working. It's worked every single other time I've ever done it in my entire life. We even got the first one, but now it's just magically not working. So I don't know what to tell you. Welcome to Warframe. The Zeraman Shotgun Philarx has the non-crit 2000% damage, so that might be good for gas, and has infinite body punch through, so that's something I'd investigate. That's fun. I like this weapon. Incarnon Propaganda. Yeah. I mean, that's not bad. I think that's fun. I just don't have some of them. I feel bad not covering your potentially good idea, but that's Warframe / not even limited to Warframe, just a lot of current build systems. Like, you can have a good idea, but because you're required to farm for everything, I just can't test your perfectly good ideas. There you get a good example of the headshot thing working. That's something. It sure looks damn cool, doesn't it? But for me, that's not working super well. It works. And we're going to talk about the Volklock in a sec, but then we really need to go do gameplay. Satisfying noise, yep. Implying this is not gameplay. I mean, it sort of is, but you get what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, I also admit to, I'm always really bad at this. This is one of my weaknesses as a streamer. I have to eventually just cut someone off and not test everything. And I don't do a very good job putting my foot down about that. That's why the streams always go longer than I plan, because I genuinely like the things you're suggesting. I just don't have a good system for like, when do you stop? I always feel like I'm kind of shortchanging someone, but I have no choice. We just have to move on. I need to accept that more often. I want to cover the other things and I have limited time. We have to stop. So it's interesting to discuss other options for weapons, but we're not going to anymore. I will briefly talk about the Volklock. What you put on this can vary a lot. Right now, mine is corrosive, which is bad. I would do something that hits in a group. Electricity and gas are both in a really weird spot right now where they both basically do the same thing. Electricity says chains between nearby enemies, but my experience is no, it's a damage aura. It's gas. It's the same as gas. They just have different damage boosts. So why not just electricity? It's pure electricity. And the status chance is not amazing. So pure electricity, I guess, would be what I'd want to do. Again, the idea here is that because you're going to be hitting enemies in a tightly packed spiral, if you electricity an enemy, it damages everybody in the group. If you electricity a second enemy, you've now electricityed every enemy in the group twice. If you electricity every enemy in the group, you multiply your electricity damage, status effect damage, by the number of enemies in the group. It does more damage when enemies are grouped up. Because this is so good in Warframe and there are so many crowds, I really wish electricity and gas were a little stronger in less extreme situations, because they would be very good general use options. It's really, to me, it has been their kind of underwhelming damage scaling that has made that a lacking area for diversity. If I could make one sentence worth of change to Warframe to make it as much better as possible, it would be to buff electricity and gas. Status damage. But they are doing some changes to how damage and armor work. These might get stronger from that. So we'll see. Watch that space. Wow, I haven't updated this in a hot minute, huh? I have no idea if galvanized mods work on sentinel weapons. That's like sort of impossible to test. So I'm just not going to do that. Vial acceleration is good though. Prime shred. Do you need both? This weapon shoots really slow if you're not familiar. It's a travel time based sniper rifle. So I like the double fire rate, but it's probably good to add more electricity because we have very little of that damage multiplier. I feel like the multi-shot is also pretty good and you want to trigger the status. So it feels to me like the weak link is vial acceleration. Here. But it's not amazing. So what we've done is it fires once every 4 seconds instead of once every 3 seconds, which, like, while a big difference, I think it's again probably the weakest link of the options available. Vigilante armaments might be a close second, but the fact that it adds crit status and damage, I think puts it a little ahead of where vial acceleration was. But if you removed vigilante armaments, I feel like that's like potato. It's probably about as good or bad. Yeah, in a way, like fire rate is the same as multi-shot, so maybe vial acceleration is better. And another thing I like about going fire rate instead is that it means you do a little less damage when you shoot, but you shoot more often, and one shot is often enough to kill everything in the bubble. So yeah, I would kind of favor going for the fire rate. I guess I agree. But they're probably pretty close. Another thing is, of the mods you have left, As always, I'm napkin math man over here. I'm not going to calculate it out, but you could just do that if you wanted to. The multi-shot mod we already have is more multi-shot than the fire rate we already have, and therefore adding another fire rate mod is probably better already, let alone that the fire rate mod we're adding is more fire rate. So it's likely this is better mathematically. And again, it's also linearly more efficient. If you don't have enough damage, you add more sooner, whereas the other setup might overkill and then you're waiting another second to shoot again. So, yeah. Yeah, you could just do faction damage. Yep. That is absolutely more damage than both of those against the relevant targets. And I often do that, actually. But I don't know. I guess there's not really a reason not to. In this case, I would have to add a forma, but I might add a forma. I'll probably wait till they rework companion weapons. Anyway, those are some options. Headshot stuff kind of has worked for me in the past, but didn't really work in that demo that well. We give you lots of primary weapon options. Something that spin to wins or like heavy attack weapons are not a bad choice in this situation. And that's what I would do for weapons. Yeah, the faction damage double dipping status damage thing, although I've really never understood like whether that is going to stay that way or what quirk of math is causing that to happen. It's a little bit frustrating because it kind of feels to me like their answer was, there's no good reason for this to be this way, but it is this way and we're keeping it that way, which I sort of understand. And players like that, they say, oh, it's fun, so they're keeping it. But to me, it's bad because it means if I try to understand coherently, it doesn't make sense. You know, it objectively doesn't make sense. They're just saying the game is inconsistent and we're keeping it that way, which I don't like. But most players prefer that, and I just don't agree. I'm sorry. I'm not no fun. I just want to be able to understand whether things should or shouldn't work. That's all I want. Well, maybe you think that's no fun. That's okay. I can actually live with that. Let's kill enemies with the build. How about that? And I will catch up on a few other things in chat while we do that. First, we'll do bounties. Steel Path bounties. Do I need... Where am I with this? I am actually going to try to gain standing and be productive while doing this, too. Actually play the Vig game. I feel a little defeated, folks. I was really set on getting this to be a neat 2 hours, and I failed very, very badly. Like, not even close. Probably going to be on the long side for a build brewery rather than on the short side. But what can you do? I'm not good enough at them yet to make them shorter, so that's okay. If I think of it that way, I can say, well, I accept that. Like, sure, I'm not. And it still came out good, so that's fine. We go. So one of the things we're going to be looking for at Asymptomatic's suggestion are the anatomizers. Big floating pentagonal things are my usual damage decoy targets. A lot of health, nice and obvious, and airborne. Yes, we're going to try to use this as a chance to demonstrate how the enemies in this faction may be uniquely susceptible to this tomfoolery. A lot of them already explode when killed. A lot of them don't have armor, so the kills will get going on their own. There's like really good medium-sized rooms for this as well. You can see the new enemies coming in thing that I was talking about, the zone control benefit. I used it. Most of the enemies in it died or were incapacitated, but then new enemies entered the area and were also controlled. That's, I think, a significant benefit here. Of course, in this particular situation, it's not especially amazing because we just don't need to be able to do it from far away. Like, we could just kill the enemies. But still not bad. You can't do multiple damage decoys, can you? You can't do multiple decoys. But you can do multiple magnetizes. You can do 4 magnetizes? I don't know. Anyway, Did we live? Died. Oh, right. Well, with the augment. No, I think, can't you still do multiple magnetizes with the augment? I don't know. Or, like, I feel like I just did. I don't know. Being able to just throw this out, and I actually have gotten a lot of overshields, you might have noticed. Why is that an invalid target? That's not. Yeah, I think you can have multiple, yeah. You can have multiple magnetizes with the augment. It just means you can't stack them with, like, on the same area or whatever. Which is a thing you can do with normal magnetize, and sometimes makes weapons behave weird if you magnetize the same bundle again. Sometimes it's looked to me in the past like that was kind of reinforcing the magnetize area, magnetizees. I don't know. And making some weapons stay in there or making enemies stay in there that wouldn't have stayed in there otherwise. So I don't know. But yeah, if you cast magnetize near the existing one with the augment, it'll explode. But I mostly don't think that's a huge deal. A pretty good duration, too, now that we're in a mission. Here's our guy. Here's our man. There he is. Please have a lot of enemies. Yeah, that's pretty satisfying. That's pretty adequate, right? Mania walked into a magnetize and ceased to exist. That's... Okay, that's, yep, that does damage, but that's just magnetized. I don't know, it's a little difficult when in missions, which is, I guess, why I don't feel so bad about spending a lot of the mission just, like, in the simulacrum. It's difficult in missions to see the benefit of damage decoy. When you look close, you can see enemies with lots of status effects on them, but depending on what our allies are using and stuff, that may not be because of us. It's not easy to know that one way or another. And again, they're gonna die anyway. This is really just you're adding that additional layer of terribleness to enemies. For what it's worth, doing a lot of status effects sure does, you know, enemies die a lot. I'm pretty sure that the pentagrenade that I left there was picked up again when I cast the new magnetize in the area. Is that a thing that exists? Let's leave. I think that happened. Did you see? I had a pentagrenade that was like sitting near the objective, and I cast magnetize, and I think it picked it back up and started flinging it around. The pentagrenades do that. That's wild. That's so silly. Yeah, for defense missions, that's sick. So yeah, like the multi-shot doesn't really matter, I guess. Here we see Zandy fleeing the scene of a crime. I know, for real. Somebody mentioned earlier the whole discussion just sounds like a war crime. This whole exploiting decoy is just not, or like magnetized decoy sounds like a Geneva Convention violating form of landmine or something. I want more, yeah, like we really need a survival. Did we keep the gram equipped for the sweet pentagram loadout? That's wonderful, but that's not exactly why. It was mostly, I just want to pull enemies into a group and do this. Let me in. No, do it right, Mag. Do the combo right. Yeah. You just pull enemies in and do this. It's very simple. Watch how I win. I mean, and there it is. Like, just look at that. Or alternatively, you can just magnetize, but You have a cheaper version if you wanna. Hopefully now we'll get bigger swaths of enemies that we can properly use the combo on. And again, multiple magnetizes too means you can kind of just like do them places, and one of them has the awful war crime damage decoy situation on it, and others of them you can do other terrible things to. Why not both? You know, why not all of them? But then you could penta all of them as well, I suppose. Someone with a mag just joined. Ominous. Who could that be? Stream sniping fellow mag enjoyers, enthusiasts? Perhaps? Nothing wrong with that. But I'm pretty excited for the build brewery to go to other games, because one of the a lot of the frustrations with doing it in Warframe came out during this stream. It's very difficult to discuss or demonstrate builds because Warframe doesn't, in my opinion, really have enough opportunity cost or like coherent pressure against the player, and therefore it's kind of difficult to talk about the like what anything does, because it doesn't most of the time. It is a lot easier to do in, I think, just single player games, but also it's easier to do in harder games to some extent, or games that give you less freedom of movement, like Warframe does. So I don't know. I mean, as always, Warframe is a nice game to talk about the context of a build, but then when you try to use it, it's sort of difficult to demonstrate anything that it does anything. But then you could argue we're going a bit above and beyond like what you're expected to be doing with a build. I somehow can't move or cast anything. Yeah. Oh, does it suck up the, what's it called? That's nice. I think it sucked up the Bone Widow. Or it's killing it now, yep. There we go. Warframe Buildcraft has many degrees of freedom. That's what you were calling it in your parlay, yep. The idea that you can, Mr. Fruit did this great parlay that was about degrees of freedom, basically like slots or places on your build where you can add stuff, make a build decision, a degree of freedom, you called it. And then also basically boxes to check in the game design that are things that are good to be good at. So it might be like damage, survivability, crowd control, defending an objective, healing maybe, you know, it would depend on the game. And it might not be as simple as something like just damage. It might be that in a given game, checking the damage box, or there are multiple damage boxes, or it takes multiple, you know, slots to check the damage box fully. Getting a good amount of damage may take more than one slot, you know. But it's a way you can think about the way the games do opportunity cost, and I think that one of the things about Warframe is that there are so many slots and not that many things you need to do with them, that is boxes to check, which does create a unique cadence to the game. Now, to some extent, this can be beneficial. Asymptomatic, you said, I personally appreciate Warframe for having high enough power ceilings that there are opportunities to dirtle and still do the thing the game is asking. It's a positive in some ways. You can do something that isn't very powerful, to be blunt, and have it still do the job of the game. But I personally, overall, don't like this way of doing it, because it means that what you do choose to do simply doesn't mean enough. I prefer a different compromise of demand on my build. I want it to be more necessary to make something good, just not too necessary to make something good. But to me, this is too little. You know, it's to some extent, I think Warframe is valuable because it is a game that has this balance. Like, there's a lot of games have a similar balance of difficulty, and Warframe has a bespoke one. That's no bad thing. Just it is it's a choice. And one of the things that I think is beneficial about talking about builds in games like this is that players can decide what balance they like. You can form an opinion about that and then find games that like have it, you know, do that thing. But that's a great way to put it, asymptomatic, yep. And Mr. Food, yeah, that parlay technically isn't out yet, but it'll be out in like 2 or 3 days. So hopefully people can find it when it's up. Another thing, I guess, is that Warframe has this interesting form of sort of sliding scale of success. Personally, I feel like that's something that would be very beneficial in Warframe if they took it further. Like, if you kill even more enemies, or doing missions faster is kind of a place that Warframe flirts with this idea. But there are lots of games where the way that the game makes it so kind of jankier things are still useful, but it's still beneficial to make something stronger, is that you can succeed more. It's like not whether you win or lose, it's how well do you do. And I feel like Warframe kind of has this, but it would be nice to have it be more. I don't know. Again, doing missions faster, sort of, a little bit, kind of touches that idea a little. We should probably just do more of this. I had suggested doing open worlds, but I think it makes sense to do more bounties. They're close enough to open, I think, and they show where the build is doing its thing the most. So let's do more of that. Let's have more of that. And speaking of having more of that, a little refreshment, I think, is in order. Pretty simple. I want tea. And one of the things that's kind of challenging about wanting tea to share with you all is that you gotta get into it. We're not brewing a tea bag. We're brewing some really nice quality tea, but it is too often packed into a tight little cake. And that means we have to open it up to get at the good stuff. I'm going to brew one of these little tea coins. These are very aged white tea. It's pretty common in white tea that you either get fresh stuff that's really good quality, or you get mediocre quality that was aged a lot, which tastes really good but really different. So this is Shomei white tea. Shomei is a not very high grade of picking of white tea. Usually the types of picking are like how many buds, how high are the leaves. Shomei is like fine, just not especially good. Mostly no buds. But it is from 2011, pretty decent age. Over 10 years is solid aging. It's picked up a lot of flavor. This one in particular has a lot of sweetness, and you can pleasantly still see the telltale kind of like green, black, white, or almost zebra striping look of the most white tea pickings. You can see bits of white in there. That's just what the leaves look like. So we're going to break it open. I'm just going to snap it in half so that it opens up more quickly. Spraying bits of tea everywhere, but it's my office and that's how it is. And then I'm going to dump some water on it and open it up. What does it taste like? They get really sweet. They just get very sweet. They have a kind of sugary, kind of nectary. A lot of them have a honey scent note or tasting note. They get a sugary or nectary like sweetness as they age. Even something pretty young, like 3 or 4 years, gets it. It's not expensive either, by the way. If you're familiar with whiskey, maybe, right? You might be thinking 10 years, good Lord, this is the decent stuff for just randomly drinking on the stream. It's not particularly expensive. I bought 100 grams of that, was like maybe $20. That's like 30 servings. It's not especially expensive per serving. So I'll just strain it out once. And this you usually don't drink. Tea is aged in open air, so one thing that does is just wash off the literally dust on the tea. It smells pretty good though. A little malty. It smells like black tea. Like commercial black tea, especially like chai. Clean, refreshing, but sweet and yeah, kind of malty. And a little bit honey. Yep, this one has a little bit of that too. I have one that is another aged white tea, but it's very focused on that honey tasting note. And it's incredibly overwhelming. I actually found that one a little much. Now we'll just give it a minute to expand and contract. I'll ban this person who's spamming in chat. Just another day at work, folks. Another day on Twitch. Another person trying to sell viewers to the most high quality viewer, low quantity viewer stream on Twitch. Can I claim that I am that? I don't know. Highest quality, certainly. Lowest quantity, I could have less people watching. We'll let that open up for a minute and then we'll brew up the rest. Just responding to a comment while we go, Ragnavar, you said, I do feel like having some more places to actually flex the higher strength builds would serve Warframe really well, so long as it's still not the majority of the game. With my experience of Destiny 2, where much of the game requires you to actively do the thing, albeit not requiring buildcraft, and that makes grinding feel much worse. Warframe's level of not needing to constantly do the thing makes doing the grind feel like less of a large expenditure of effort for every single thing. Yes, so that certainly is like a potential benefit. If you have the positive aspect of the grinding, it can be relaxing. It can be a way to wind down after a day of work. I have no real interest in it, but plenty of people do, and that's not bad or wrong. It's a matter of taste. But absolutely, there are other benefits. I think that's well put, Ragnavar, to not requiring the player to like do the thing fully in normal gameplay. You can phone it in a bit for normal gameplay. It reminds me a little bit of Genshin Impact, where doing dailies and weeklies and killing bosses to level up your characters, you benefit from doing more damage. You can almost one-shot some of those things with the very most powerful builds. It's not really challenging, but you still get a benefit for doing more damage. And then every so often you have Spiral Abyss, a kind of twice monthly challenge where it really is decently hard, even for people with established accounts. To me, that feels like a very good balance. Arknights is also a game that comes to mind where it has the kind of degrees of success thing. Most events will have a ramp of difficulty that will go from a player who started just today can do this to even the most advanced player finds this challenging. And being able to just do lots of those, and the more of them you do, the more percentage of the rewards you get. And so eventually it's not the end of the world if you can't, do the very hardest mission. You lose very little, but it's still there, so you can cut your teeth against the challenges you like and then stop when it's not fun. I think that balance is good and a little missing from Warframe. That's all I was trying to say. Not requiring hitting the power ceiling of the game, making builds more shareable and making it more relaxing potentially is definitely beneficial for sure. That should be opened up enough so you can't see super easily, but the tea cake has expanded a little bit. Okay, that's tea leaves just on the camera. Got you a little get a little snoof. Just get your nose right in there, you know what I mean? Or just right in. You could see a little bit that the cake has more defined leaf pieces. Yes, you can see that clearly now, right? It's just, hydrated. And now I'm just going to dump the rest of the water on it, and away we go. And I've pre-measured it. These coins are 5 grams. I just know that from I've drank most of this tea that I got, so the coins are 5 grams. And I measured the water, so that was 250 milligrams of water, milliliters of water. Well, same thing, I guess, because it's water. And now I'll just let that sit for not very long. A minute or two will be enough to steep it and drain it out. One of the joys of drinking good quality tea with you all on a stream is that good quality tea is very resilient to steep time mistakes. And we're brewing a rather large amount of water to the amount of tea. I'm not brewing this super condensed, 5 grams of tea to only 100 milliliters of water is what I normally do. But by amping it up a little bit, doing a few steeps at the same time, it's easier to get it right. I don't have to pay as much attention to get it right, which is good because I'm paying attention to all of you. Yeah, let's queue up another one and keep going, but I'll drain that out when it's ready. Yeah, I'll do alchemy. Let's go for the tankiest enemies too. They won't survive my damage otherwise, or they probably won't survive my damage anyway. So let's do alchemy. Hell yeah. But anyway, Ragnavar continued. You said, yeah, I can be productive for my progression towards stuff I'd like to get and any new contents, construction, or mod requirements without feeling like I got to do the good damage and kill stuff fast so I can get the rewards. Warframe's problem, on the other hand, is that the stuff you grind for doesn't have much of a place to be used once you've made a build. At least some of it doesn't require you to stay in one mission for hours for level cap. Another feeling I have is that a lot of games, even the games I said were doing this well, could use a benefit to winning with more different teams. For example, I've often thought Arknights is a great glaring example of this. An established player may be able to clear a difficult mission with a few different teams, making the player repeat 0 units but clear it again, and then they can get rewards again, would be really fun and a way for higher level players to benefit from just interesting different team types. One of the biggest flaws in current gaming, if you like making builds, is that very few games benefit you if you simply make something different, interesting, clever, good, but neither here nor there, and you can do the thing with one. The game just doesn't care if you can do it with something else. But players do care about that. It's fun to use variety, and I think a lot of these games could use that too. Just being able to clear with a wider variety of options would be beneficial. You could say Deep Archimedia is like sort of flirting with that. The Duviri Paradox is a little bit flirting with that, but I'd like it to be a bit more direct. I make a deliberate build that is different, unique from my other one, and win again with that. Maybe I get rewards a few more times if I can keep succeeding, if that makes sense. That should be enough brew time to at least give it a taste. This water might have cooled slightly a little bit. Let's leave it for another minute. Let's leave it. Give it another minute. Why not? I'd rather if it be too strong than too weak. That's just me. That's the dynamic I want, not gonna lie. I did not get the chance to put on my 3D glasses. Can we spill it again? Yeah. I'll just spill it all over my setup again. I love doing that, for sure. For sure. I always, anyone who knows me knows I'm always doing that. Yeah, no, let's drain it out now. It's fine. Because we gotta get going. See, more robust color. So aged white tea, significantly aged white tea, has a darker color than you might expect. White tea, you think like super light tea. Light flavor, light color. Both wrong. Probably the most obviously flavored tea, in my opinion, and also often quite vibrant in color. It's really green tea a lot of the time that has the lightest color, though certainly not necessarily flavor. White tea for me was the most exciting thing to get out of getting into good quality tea because it's so different from what my cultural background living in the United States told me. It's just wrong. Low caffeine, it's not. If anything, it often has higher caffeine. Lighter flavor, it's not. If anything, it has the stronger or more robust flavor. Lighter flavor, not even particularly that it doesn't have a like loud flavor, but it's also just so sweet a lot of the time with a sort of floral or honey or nectary sweetness. It's so not what I was drinking for most of my life. I had never had it. Whereas the green tea that I've had, good quality green teas, are just the same flavor but much better as the green tea I'd had. The white tea I've had has been utterly unrecognizable to the bad white tea, I guess. They say in tea production that white tea is the tea where you can't hide. It's not processed that much, except maybe aged. And so if it's a bad picking, like it just doesn't taste good. It's not as easy to kind of hide it. And there are even more people spamming to sell viewers in my chat. And there are various ways, various tea processing methods that they use to kind of cover up or compensate for poor quality material. But it's hard to do with white tea. So good. It's got this green, fresh, kind of like it's a young white tea, an unaged white tea tasting note. Clean, crisp, refreshing. A little bit in the category of like it would taste really good cold, very refreshing cold. I often take my leftover white tea leaves and just put them in a jar with cold water in the fridge overnight. Great, quick little cold brew tea, especially after the leaves have opened up. It's got that, but then it has this like malty, rich sweetness, body, syrupy kind of quality. Almost, it has like a, not quite maple syrup, but if you've had that thing that's like water tapped from a tree as like a pine water soda, I'm making it sound like it tastes like nothing, but I love those. It has a sappy quality in a pleasant way, I think. It tastes like good tree sap. And it's got that grassy, fresh note. So clean, really good texture. It's got a lot of body. It's a little like thick on the palate. Oh, that's really, really good. I haven't had that in a little while, actually. That's better than I remember it being. Ooh, it's so good. Thank you for sharing some tea. Let's get back to doing the damage decoy do. Jimani said, I opened up a pack of Da Hong Pao Rock Oolong tea today. It's pretty nice. I'm glad you like it. That's maybe one of the ones I recommended as a common like crowd pleaser or people newer to tea. Da Hong Pao is a very common recommendation for people in that situation, and one of the reasons is it's so loud, super dark, powerful color, spicy, bold, kind of astringent but still pretty accessible sweet flavor. Oh, so good. I love Da Hong Pao. My tea friend that currently lives in London, she's a big fan of Wu Yi or rock oolong tea. A different type of rock oolong. That's also very punchy like that. She also really likes the duck shit, Yashizhang. I can't pronounce that perfectly. Duck shit oolong. Both have that kind of like sweet, caramelly, malty, a little bit baking spicy kind of flavor. So damn good. So good. I'm really glad you liked it, Jaman. That's an easy one. I mean, it's fantastic that you like it, of course, but that's like low-hanging fruit. Everybody likes that. Almost everyone I've had try it has enjoyed that. In a way, I would think that this mag setup would be really good for this environment because it does a kind of get off me thing. You can just put magnetizes in the environment and control a rather large swath of space around the objective while you futz around with, doing the thing you need to do. We need cold boys, but the enemies keep like not cooperating. We can yank them out of the way and group them together. Yeah, like having these sort of pylons where enemies just get stuck in one place, and the pentagrenade thing, the pentagrenade on the ground and then your magnetize sucks it back up is so sick. I didn't expect to like that as much as I do. We didn't end up getting into damage decoy too much, but my goal was not to deceive you about how effective it is, just to show what it does. It just lets you add a negative debuff to when you magnetize a group of enemies. And the main benefit is not like that enemy dying, I don't particularly care about. I want it to control space. And when new enemies get sucked in, they get grouped up and held in place, and they also die a lot because they have damage in the area or they're getting a lot of statuses. It's not so much like that one enemy dies a ton. Just to clarify, it's probably obvious now that I say it, but some people might say, well, you're not even killing the individual enemies. Like, that doesn't accomplish as much as controlling space. That's my feel. Decent duration. I don't know. I think I might not mind more duration, though. Has been on my mind. I've said that a few times during this video. But I wouldn't mind having a little bit longer magnetize, since a lot of the benefit is that zone control, I think. Someone mentioned this earlier. I think it was Pixel, maybe. Pixel, you had mentioned quite reasonably the sort of Eximus and Overguard concern. To what extent this build feels like it's adequately controlling Eximus and Overguard targets. And the answer is, yeah, no. I mean, generally my playstyle preference to deal with these guys is to focus fire them. I just only kill those, and I use abilities or some group murder technique to kill everything that isn't immune to my crowd control, and then everything is vulnerable to my crowd control. To be honest, I've never really seen it as much of a problem. I've always felt like, well, I don't need every enemy to be vulnerable to that, but it does mean if that enemy is going to kill you, that you get in a bad way. We're done with this part, we need to do the vents. The moment that, your defenses are down. I'm not saying it's a non-issue. To be certain. Just to say that I personally don't think it's the end of the world either. It's always been something I thought, yeah, it's a nice gameplay mix-up. I like the Overguard and Eximus enemy presence. It means that you can mostly, except in longer missions, lock down enemies, and when you can't, it feels like a pleasant change of pace to me. But I don't know. I mean, other people might be running into problems with it in different... you know, I haven't played Deep Archimedia yet. I know what it is from all of you, but I haven't played it yet. It might be that the very challenging modes we've been given access to, it's a way bigger problem than I anticipate. And certainly this loadout, like, I probably wouldn't have Mag bring 3 utility things. I would sacrifice one of the slots to be a dedicated, you know, single target, kill the guy weapon. That's what I usually do when I play. I'll have one weapon be there to kind of clear out the Eximus or the Overguard unit. Hey, Sympathetic, you said the Sanguine Eximi are a landmine when they zap the bullet sponge by VIP back to full health, though. Right, yeah, sometimes they can be a problem, just to say that I have often found it to be like an interesting gameplay wrinkle, rather than a deal breaker for a certain type of crowd control. Not that they're not a challenge, I just, like, I think that's okay. If anything, it's a problem related to our discussion of difficulty from before, though, that the enemies that are a little bit of a gameplay mix-up are also, though, immune to most of your abilities. Like, that isn't a great solution on the whole. Did I miss? We have a lot of them right here. That's kind of nice. What? What's happening to me? Chad, I feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I usually throw them at the floor close enough. Good tip. I'm gonna try that. I've never had this problem before. You went through it. Did you see that? That straight up just went through it. Okay. Enemies, leave me alone. Get out of here. Okay. What the heck is going on? I would say I'm lagging, but I literally didn't even move for a lot of the, Here, look. How can that miss? How did that miss? I don't understand. Yeah, why? I legitimately don't know what I'm doing wrong, right? The splash means it'll hit, right? So what the heck is going wrong? I guess I should stop throwing them, because if my game is bugged and they won't hit, that means I'm taking them away from my teammates. One more try. No, the game is just blatantly spitting on me. That's not gonna happen. We'll just leave after this one. It's fine. Can you debuff? Oh, there we go. Yeah, it totally works on the Necromax. Beautiful. I think, anyway. That's kind of unclear. I'm not entirely sure if that's working on the Necromech. Is that magnetized on you, my friend? The Necromech has no interest in my shenanigans. Apparently. He simply must be dispatched. There is no other way forward. Morris Fall, welcome aboard. You said I haven't played Warframe in years. What's changed? I can't give you a full synopsis of that, but I would say a big change recently is that a lot of the changes made to previous systems in the game have been to clarify. So it's been a good time for making builds in Warframe, because a lot of the recent developer direction has been to make things more understandable, to make changes that don't buff or nerf anything, but simply make it easier to understand things. There's been some wording changes for arcanes in particular. That one comes to mind. Some of them have been adding detail, like if something is a cooldown, it will say it does. A big one that I really liked was to make health and shield mods actually give the amount they say they do, armor mods. Previously, there was this weird thing where health mods would say 440% health, but then you'd add them to your leveled Warframe and you would get just blatantly not that. You'd get about double health, not 440%. And it was because it was multiplying your base health, but not your modified health at level 30, which but like why? That's just so confusing for no real reason. So they changed it. I was really impressed. Morris, I feel like it's hard as a developer to make a change that isn't as marketable, right? Like they can't as easily say, hey, the new reason to play Warframe this update is we fixed the wording, but I think that does have a long-term, more subtle effect. I really admire their persistence to do that type of update. I kind of get why it's scary. From a marketing perspective, it feels like a lose-lose, but they took the time to do it. So that's been really good. We get a big companion change. That's a big recent change. Companions now never die permanently. If they're destroyed, they simply start a resurrection timer. That's a minute by default. And there are plenty of mods which used to keep companions alive, which are now mods that just make companions come back faster after they die. This is a pretty nice change. It means you can, get benefit out of companions that didn't have an easy way to stay alive. And also it means that there are lots of new niches for companions. They added a lot of new mods, and some companions can tie into those but would have died easily. And so now you don't have to worry about that. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of good things to say about the, design direction for a lot of the new build options in Warframe, but honestly, I have very little to say about everything else. I've enjoyed the story, but I don't have much to say about it. I've enjoyed lots of parts of the game, but as for making builds, it's been a decent time. We've been eating fairly good, I think. Extraction is broken. This entire mission is broken. I'm going to leave because we don't have all day. That mission is just horribly broken for me. So that unfortunately has not totally changed, but Morris, I hope that's at least a slice if you like making builds. That's the only thing I'm here to talk about, but I think there will be things you'll really like. I have mostly positive things to say, yeah. And folks, that's most of our show. Let's do a little recap of what we got and also make any last minute changes, and then that's the time we have. So today we fiddle around with damage decoy on mag. This is a debuff that makes the enemy that you cast it on, you can cast decoy on enemies as a debuff instead of making a decoy. That enemy, when attacked, gives the attacker a lot of status effects, and they take more damage. Not hugely significant in my opinion, but it can add up if they have no armor. And remember, status effects can be corrosive heat. They might lose some armor. Pretty cool. It also works with the Archon mods, so you can trigger corrosive more consistently and get energy back from electricity. Pretty sweet. That's nice with magnetize. You can have the same target that you magnetize have damage decoy, and then they'll get shot a lot. Enemies will have many debuffs. You get some various benefits. And this just means that when you put a magnetize in an area to kind of lock it down, you're doing more to the enemies inside it with one set of debuffs. You simply add this in when you magnetize. If you want to kill the enemies in the magnetize, that is as easy as ever. You can shoot practically anything in there. You can use crush, and we've been using fracturing crush. I shifted from polarize earlier in the video. This isn't to kill the enemies in magnetize, it's to make it a more meaningful crowd control area and to give you utility, like it becomes a weird energy generation ability. We didn't really talk about that too much, but it was happening throughout the stream. Range is really good on magnetize, but with the range boost from magnetized discharge, I came to prefer a little bit of strength. We talked about the math a little more earlier in the stream, but if you use Molt Augmented and Growing Power, even with this little strength, you will get to full armor reduction on Fracturing Crush eventually, and on the way there, it's still a lot. So this is pretty effective. This hits a wide area. I feel like they buffed the range of this at some point. The radius this affects, the Crush effects, is massive, and it's normally really slow. You can see in the video, but this gives casting speed to Crush. Very nice. I wish that was innate, but the other effects are good. It's crowd control. It permanently removes armor, and Crush also gives you overshields for every target you hit. That's how the build plans to stay alive. You have the Augur mod, you have catalyzing shields for a long base shield gate, you can get overshields from Crush, and you have Taxon's molecular conversion. The Sentinel's mostly here to add damage to your magnetizes using the Volclock. This is punch through, so it'll bounce around in there and hit enemies over and over for electricity, which is surprisingly effective. This alone with magnetize can kill level 100 enemies by itself. So you really don't need much damage, but it's there. There's many sources of it. Otherwise, we just picked other weapons. The only other one I really have much to say about, you could pick many things to kill enemies and magnetize, is just a melee weapon that works well with pull. I think that's valuable. You want to pay a little energy and just kill a group of enemies. Magnetize can often be kind of overkill for that. You could just pull and use a spin to win, or heavy attacks work really well with pull. We didn't pick a final arcane, and I did want to briefly talk about weapons again, because we talked about this before, but you really are vulnerable to like Eximus enemies and Overguard enemies. You would want to bring a weapon that's like a single target damage hose against them, but there are many of those. Take your pick. Morrisfall, you said, what are arcanes? Well, to make a long story short, at the end of the stream, I would love to talk about this more. Morris, we do this time every week. I'd love to have you back sometime, but quickly for now. They're like enchantments. You could think of them like a separate type of mod that just has its own slots. The opportunity cost, the cost to equip an arcane, is much higher because you have so few arcane slots, and thus their power is often also higher. Arcanes also do a big part of the opportunity cost of arcanes. They can do almost anything. There's arcanes for basically any stat. There's arcanes for damage for your weapons, fire rate for your weapons, crit chance. There are arcanes for such a wide variety of things that it's quite demanding. You know, you only have 2 slots. It might seem like, well, for what? But you can get basically anything out of them. On this build, I'm not really sure. I mean, you could add more strength. Ragnavar mentioned there's this arcane that when you could do power ramp. This stacks up a bunch of strength. You can use an operator ability to gain strength. This is a nice fit because it benefits you if you use different abilities, like not the same ability over and over, which is quite compatible with this build. You don't really need to use the same ability in a row. So power ramp seems actually really good. You might not be compelled by the amount of strength, but it seems like a good fit. The ceiling is just a little low. I would agree, asymptomatic. The total benefit is kind of, it's only 28% if you do it perfectly. Though I think this build's natural play pattern is pretty good for arcane power ramps. So certainly I would use it here, but only if you want the strength. Or you don't want to use Molt Augmented. But you could also use this slot for weapon damage. That's something I would seriously consider. I had been reaching for fire rate, like velocity, and then bringing a secondary that is meant to do big damage to single targets for like Eximus enemies and stuff, to kill anything my crowd control can't kill. I don't know, when I reach for that, I often go for like Gaze, for example. Some beam weapon, you can target the head. You get the utility of it being a kit gun if you want it. Something like this is usually what I'd go for. Ooh, it's not amazing with this build, but the effects that give you more damage per status type are good here. You have lots of ways to do that. If you shoot inside the magnetize while you have damage decoy active, that's a lot of status effects, so that's cool. Is Paris Prime still good? Most of the weapons that were good in the past, I mean, Warframe builds are quite cookie cutter for damage. If you put on the different damage multipliers and the weapon has good crit and status chance, it does good damage, usually. After that, it's basically, how does the weapon hit enemies? And Paris Prime has always been bad in that category because it's just a bow. That's not bad damage, but applying it only to one target with travel time and projectile arc has always been a drawback. But not any more than before. Morrisfall, you'll hear a lot of people say that they would say that Warframe has power crept a lot. That's not really true in my opinion. There are some weapons that the weapon is a lot stronger, but really it's just we've gotten mods that are more of what we had before. But I mean, ultimately it's the mods giving you the damage. So I would not consider anything that you found powerful before to be like so bad now, unless it's gotten specific changes. And there is a new concept in the game where you can add an Incarnon adapter, a kind of second layer over a weapon that gives it additional abilities. And Paris Prime has one, yep. Pretty much every weapon has one, right? So yeah, it's gotten like an additional path to power. If you look up Incarnon adapters, as Bionic Me described them. That is a way you can power up most weapons, but Paris Prime has one. And yeah, I don't think that if you ask, is anything still good? I would answer the exact same thing I just said. I think it is mostly the case that weapons are about as good as they were before. It's just there are even stronger mods if you want to go get them. I think that's about it for weapons stuff. I mean, just bringing a heavy weapon, you saw that's what I did when I was in the previous mission. You want a bunch of single target damage for an enemy. Paris Prime if you like. But I would often just play a heavy weapon for that as a backup. But I like my heavy weapon being like a backup. Kind of just good at everything. Something a little more specialized to kill single targets doesn't sound bad to me. So I don't know, like Gaze, or you could use the Nucor if you wanted. But there's lots of other things. I mean, I also use Dubba Stubba a lot. Kuva Twin Stubbas for that. It's take your pick. Twin Gurkatas would be fine. There's lots of things. Not sure there's too much else to say. I didn't really talk about focus, but I think Zeneric is valuable here. You're very powered by abilities. So even though you have, in theory, the Archon Stretch damage decoy thing to give you energy, I still think in practice it's nice to have Zeneric here. You could consider going for more cast speed if you wanted it. So Madurai. But I personally don't think it's a huge deal. That's about it. Mischief managed, folks. Thank you for the stream, Asymptomatic. I appreciated the space too. I'm sorry you didn't have a great time though. Asymptomatic, I know you were saying in the previous stream you had a kind of butts weekend and birthday. So I hope it's a little better. I'm glad we got to have you for this stream. It was originally your suggestion to do Damage Decoy Mag. I'm glad you got to be here. Folks, thanks for joining us. We do this time every week if you were watching the stream. On Thursdays is what today is. Around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so we started like 3 hours ago. If you are around that time every week, I'd love to have you back. And I'll also see you tomorrow and Monday, same time, just also those days. Tomorrow we're going to stream Hades 1 again. We talked a little bit about it, and you all expressed enough interest in Hades, but wanted not Hades 2 enough, that I'm perfectly happy to play more Hades 1. It's been pretty interesting comparing the two. I've been playing a lot of Hades 2 in my own time, so it's pretty fun to compare alongside the design decisions in Hades 1, which I mostly like less, but there are places where I have quibbles. I don't know. I will quibble to you tomorrow, on the morrow, so if that sounds fun, I'd love to have you. And this Monday, we're doing the Limbus Company stream as normal. We're going to do another Build Brewery. It's just going to be about a Limbus Company team. I kind of grumbled a lot during the stream today about how Warframe is sometimes a frustrating game to demonstrate builds in. I think Limbus Company will make for a very, very good game to demonstrate builds in a way. At least, anyway, you'll see. You could decide for yourself. But I'm quite excited for those builds. I actually tried to do it this Monday, but I'm a nerd and said it wasn't good enough, and decided to try again next week. So looking forward to it. Hope to have you back. Thanks to the follow, Morrisfall. Hope to catch you back again sometime. This time next Thursday we'll be here as normal as well. Talk to y'all soon. Have a good night.